Okay, so noting that it's 7 p.m. on April 6th, 2022, I'd like to call the Board of Health meeting to order. Hold on, I'm admitting folks. All right. We have a very full agenda this evening. But before we get started, we have 5 variance hearings and then quite a number of other topics. But before we start, we will have a kind of a roll call of which of the board members are present. And so I guess for this, I can start. Daryl Beardsley present.
Matt Beavers present.
Lisa Camp present.
Matt Vitale present.
Okay. And then as mentioned, Rebecca is expected to come later. She had another commitment. So one thing we usually start off with, nothing is listed here, but I do have a couple of items to potentially add.
Darryl, if I can interject just for a minute, it's Mark.
Yes.
The chat box is on. I just checked it. Just
Oh,
so you...
thank you. Thank you. I do wish I could just unconditionally change that. All right. There are a couple of items that have come up less than 24 hours in advance of this meeting, and we can vote whether we would like to add them to the agenda. One is that just more of a notice that we're putting in a request for funds for digitizing Board of Health records. And the other is I had a follow-up conversation with DEP yesterday about wells, well installation, well logs, who oversees things. And I could update on that, but I will say in one respect, I have short comments on that. And the other, I think I would prefer that it was noted on the agenda, even though it's a generic discussion about well issues. I
would prefer that as well.
Yeah,
So-
I think so too. So I would not support putting that on the agenda tonight.
All right, then let's take them one by one. Do we have a motion to add the ARPA funds request
So moved.
to the,
Second,
and all those in favor? Matt, you're up first.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa Camp, aye.
Matt Vitale, aye.
And Daryl Beardsley, aye. And then do we have a motion to add the discussion about well research and further information that we've received from Mass DEP?
I would prefer to add that to the next agenda unless there's something time sensitive or urgent.
I know. I think, do we still have to go through, introduce it as?
No, I guess we don't have to vote to add it. So we're choosing not to add it. All right.
Concur.
I would
All
love
right.
to, I'd like to add it just to the next one. So it's a posted agenda topic.
Yes. Okay. So let's remember at the end to do that.
Is it, wait, when you say next one, is our,
The first week of May meeting.
so are we not having? Okay.
I think we ended up not needing to have the special meeting that we
Okay.
talked about for next week because we were able to get the variance hearings in.
Okay, thank you.
Do I have that
Okay.
right, Ellen?
Yes, you do.
Woohoo!
The next
Sorry to
meeting
interrupt,
is
Daryl.
May 4th.
So I'd like to add the well topic to the May 4th agenda.
Okay. So Mark, I'll ask you, is the issue that Robert Vay is here for, is that relatively quick? Because we also have Sean Colleen, who's here for an issue that will be brought up with.
Yes. I would say if I,
Select Board tomorrow.
yep, no, and I think we can get through the business for Robert Vay from BIG within 5 to 10 minutes, unless Robert's going to talk real slow. He goes by Bob, just so everyone knows.
I'm gonna be quick.
Okay.
Okay, so
So-
let's take that first because you were here bright and early.
Great.
And then next will be a discussion about Town Hall well and PFAS.
So it's, let's see, I got to look at my agenda. The agenda is not showing up. It's item number 4 under my business. It's for 31 South Main Street. The owner is Michael Hanlon. And it's a septic tank and distribution box replacement permit number 22-6. And the plan has been received and I'm recommending approval. I don't know, Daryl, if you want to bring it up on the screen, but the only change that I've mentioned to Bob from BIG is just on the connection. If it's an angle, it's the building pipe coming from the house to the septic tank. That has to be a straight pipe, so there's a bit of an angle there. So I'm recommending that a clean out be provided at that connection spot, and now show up on the plot plan right down the bottom left. You'll see dotted lines, and there's a there's a note, connect to existing building pipe sewer. And at that angle, I would just recommend that they put a clean out if it's an angle. Outside of that, I'm recommending approval of the 2 compartment tank replacement, as well as the distribution box.
And Mark, can I just ask just because, again, I know we've seen these before, and I think we've got another one elsewhere on the agenda. What's the sort of motivation behind this? What's the issue we're solving with this?
Well, I believe they did a Title V inspection and the system indicated the tank. And Bob, you can help me on this one. Either the tank was leaking or needed to be replaced.
Okay,
I
so
believe it was leaking, Mark.
perfect. So we think that the soil absorption system itself is working appropriately and performing as required for Title V, and we're just replacing the damaged components of the overall system.
That is correct. Normally, the board doesn't see a distribution box, but in this case you are, because it's part of the septic tank replacement. And
Okay.
the septic tank replacements for a 2,000 gallon 2 compartment tank, a direct replacement from what's there.
Perfect. Thanks, Mark.
You're welcome.
All right, so you're recommending approval, and are there any conditions? Oh, the clean out port,
Yeah, to
correct?
clean out, and they made a note for the H20D box that would have been done at pre-construction, but that's fine. That's the only condition I would recommend on the approval.
All right, so then do we have a motion to approve these plans with the condition noted?
So moved.
Second,
Seconded.
All right, all in favor?
Matt Beavers,
Aye.
aye.
oh, Lisa, I.
Matt Vitale, aye.
Oh, and Daryl, I. Okay,
So, and just
Um,
if I may, Daryl, to
yes.
Bob, if I may, Bob, so just give us a call tomorrow. If you want to do a pre-construction and get moving with the septic tank installation, it could be done in the next couple of days. Thank you.
I'll do that. Thanks, Mark.
okay. Next, I'd like to go to the.
Thank you.
Yes,
Have a good night,
you're
guys.
welcome. Okay. Sorry, admin stuff. All right. Let's see, where's that? The town hall well water quality discussion. So tomorrow, Tom Trainer from the Groundwater Protection Committee, Sean Colleen from DPW, and I will be at the select board meeting to go over recent results on PFAS for town wells. And actually, Tom, do you want to give a quick little overview of that?
I would love to, and can I share my screen?
Yes, let me stop sharing and then you can. Okay,
All right, let me go back to share screen. And let me just show 3 slides that we were going to show the select board. You're up. So, and I don't want to insult anyone on this committee, particularly people like Lisa, but I assume the board is familiar, been reading in the popular and technical press about our big problems with PFAS and new analytical methods that can monitor them down to the part per trillion level. They're showing up everywhere and had been used in products for many, many decades, and we're just now realizing how broad. And the problem now is they're showing up in groundwater in wells air, including Sherborn. And the regulations in Massachusetts you know, in 2020, were changed to drop the maximum contaminant level down.
Hey, Tom, you're going in and out. You might want to maybe if you take your camera off, you won't. We're losing your audio. Tom, you're frozen.
Uh-oh, I see he has my quality of, all right. So while Tom is maybe getting reconnected, I'll just mention, so there are hold on. There are levels of PFAS approaching 20 in the well serving town hall and other downtown buildings. And we just wanted to make the select board aware of that. And PFAS has been found in different locations throughout town, so it's not a particularly isolated incident, and it is a regional condition more than it is a property by property condition. We also want to bring up issues about putting in treatment sooner than later for the system. Sean, we met with Sean Klein too, and he brought up an excellent point that the increased testing needed for when PFAS levels are over 10 part per trillion are, they're not enormous, but they could certainly help offset the cost of a treatment system. And so that's worthy of consideration. And
Yeah. So Daryl, are we talking a point of entry treatment system with GAC? Or-
most likely, unless there's some other options of treating different uses of water differently, but I don't know if that's possible for the piping within the town building. I'd find it wonderful if it was possible, but
Yeah, I mean, if it's potable, anyone can drink it. There's not going to be a distinction. So I wouldn't think that would make sense.
well, I would think not treating toilet water would be a
Yeah, but
reasonable thing.
it's coming in. It's like the same thing as in your house.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There are not,
Yeah.
probably not separate pipe runs for that. So, and Sean could certainly speak to that if he'd like. So I guess I basically want to get a sense of the board about, I see this as a very preliminary discussion with the select board just to introduce it and many more details to follow. Again, if it was a client of mine, I would always advise them not to wait until 20 is hit, but to just take care of it since the level's been consistently high.
Yeah.
And part of that could be, from it, again, for who I deal with, it would be liability concerns for a company. I don't know how things apply in municipalities.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. You know, I have a sense of cost for large systems, and I have a large, you know, municipal systems, which is, you know, a completely different scale than what we're talking
Oh
about.
yeah, those are,
And I also, yeah,
Yeah.
no. Yeah. And
those
I
are
also,
millions of dollars down on the Cape. I think it's Barnstable has done that already. so.
yeah, I mean, they're not all that expensive. It really depends on the flow rate, you know, the gallons per day
Mhm.
that the municipality is doing, but and the levels of PFAS. But I've also you know, put in POETs as part of treatment for PFAS and perchlorate and other, you know, substances in residences, and you know, it's under $10,000 for you know, that scale. So I don't think it's going to be, I guess I don't know our finances well enough, but looking at Jeff here, you know, it's going to probably be double digit, I would think, sort of for a poet for the size system. Again, I don't know enough details about the gallons per day, Sean, that we're looking at, but I think we could get a fairly economical system installed, you know, without too much. I guess the question will be, you know, what gets complicated. So this would be considered a voluntary action, and it's not related to a site. So I don't think we need an LSP at this juncture to oversee it. So that's good. and I probably wouldn't want to be the town's LSP anyway, but,
Mhm.
you know, I just think that that's probably makes sense. And I'd rather that we nip it in the bud before it is above 20. I think from even a regulatory perspective, I think that makes a lot of sense. So I would fully support that.
And I
Okay, so-
apologize.
oh.
I got a better connection now. Did I
We started
see the
discussing
numbers
it,
and what
Tom,
really
sorry.
Yeah, no, I apologize for my connection. The real concern that Daryl and I had of late is the town center, the town hall well, which serves these multiple buildings. You know, it's been hitting over 18 part per trillion several times in the last 4 or 5 months. So it's a rounding error from going over 20.
Yeah,
And
I
that's
agree.
the concern.
Yeah, I think that makes so much sense. And I think it makes sense to be proactive versus reactive. And like Sean was indicating, I guess, to Daryl and you know, just stretching it out over the course of the next couple of years, the monitoring and analytical costs. And then the very likely need that we're going to have a couple quarters where it's above 20 since we're so close. I just think, yeah, it's sort of a no-brainer from that perspective. I agree.
I would note the only wrinkle I see is I've seen how Mass DEP for other PWSs handles what kind of testing frequency they require for different parameters. But PFAS are new, so I'm not sure if they will, you know, to what degree they'll take into account a treatment system and thereby reduce back to quarterly or semi-annually or annually. I don't think we can completely predict that now, but if it eventually they get more comfortable with it, such as with other parameters and treatment systems that
I actually think that is covered in the monitoring schedule. I can look into that, Daryl.
Okay.
But I actually think that was contemplated. And I think after, I can't remember if it's 2 rounds or 4 rounds of demonstration of efficacy of the treatment system, I think you can go to a, you know, a lower mandated frequency of monitoring. But
Okay, that's good.
I can't remember the specifics, but they obviously want to encourage treatment versus discourage. So, you know, that's part of the, you know, beauty of it. So I would support that. I'm glad you guys are doing it. And hopefully the select board, you know, will concur. Jeff's sort of nodding, so that's a good sign.
Yeah, I mean, we have bottled water there. I'm wondering if we should recommend using that for now. I don't know. You guys can decide, but
I mean, it's not mandatory. It would be a voluntary measure since it's actually
Yeah.
never exceeded the MCL.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that if we
well, we already have bottled water. We already have bottled water, you know, in the break room, so we could
Yeah.
just recommend it.
Yeah, just encourage people that for, you know, drinking water consumption or
Mhm.
making teas or coffee, you know, to
Yeah.
use bottled water if feasible. Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't make it too alarmist. So
No,
you
no,
could-
I know, but
I would love to see, though, when we get the water quality to where we'd like it, to eliminate the bottled water from a
Yeah.
sustainability perspective. It's
Yeah.
just, we have water right here. We should be taking care of it and the supply. So
yeah, I agree.
of course, we need to test the bottled water then too first before we.
Don't even go there. A whole other can of worms. I think they have Poland Spring though, and Poland Spring's good because we do their water consulting, so I can say that. Well,
they
that's
do
good.
draw from a lot of different places. So,
Yeah.
okay. All
That's
right,
great.
Sean or Tom, any other?
No, I totally
Comments?
agree that I think the town should be looking at treatment at that well. And if you noticed when the slide was up, some of the other wells are hitting 15 and 16. So The state's requiring monthly monitoring if you go over 10, so it's gonna have to watch them.
Okay.
Sean has his hand up.
Oh, Sean? Yes.
I was waiting patiently. Just, Lisa probably knows more about this than I do, but the information we got from Whitewater was an estimate that ranged from 20 to 60,000 for the install and permitting, and hedging more towards the 60. And their take was probably 1 to 2 years before we would get a permit to install
What?
on a system for that. So again, this is just quick info.
Yeah. I don't think that's, I think that timing is not accurate. I know that there's been a lot more alacrity, and like I said, Division of Drinking Water and Wayside Cleanup want to encourage treatment, and I think they'd be very supportive of this approach. So I don't know. I haven't done a building like this, like a town hall servicing well, but I've done residences and I've helped with large municipal wells, and the permits were much faster than that. But I think that double digit thousands, it's going to be somewhere in there. It's going to be somewhere between 10 and 100. I just don't know enough about the building, the supply specifics and the piping and the infrastructure, et cetera, to be more, but that does sound right. It's going to be somewhere between 10 and 100.
Right, and we do need to remember that we have not cleared out of our cease and desist thanks to the library construction. So we're still kind of in a weird little limbo with the entire public water supply. It has not been finalized, and it's not gonna be until after the library and the site get finished. So it's probably not really the time to be going to DEP and asking them to add anything.
Wait, so is that because the same well is also going to be servicing the library and that infrastructure has not yet been installed or activated?
No, it's because we fell under a cease and desist because we were digging too close to the public water supply.
Right, I know that, but I guess what's the linkage? What's the concern about?
The link is we have not had a sanitary site survey signed off, completed, and finalized yet, nor can we until the site's done.
Oh, and when is that?
That's like asking me when the books are going to be in the library.
I know, well,
Kind of,
yeah.
I mean,
we should
it
ask
doesn't really
council.
matter because it's going to be done long before we're walking into DEP and asking them for a permit.
I would maybe think creatively if we could work with council to somehow bifurcate those issues. I just, again, no one at DP would want to inhibit treatment system for PFAS.
I
Like,
agree with that.
so
think-
I think there's a creative way to approach this, Sean, that would not put this in a linear fashion along the lines you were just describing. Those don't need to be linked activities, I think. So maybe council can assist with that.
Right.
And I don't know that DEP would necessarily stand in the way
Yeah.
of that. There are other
Yeah.
objectives that they want to see met.
Yeah, I agree. So I don't know who should run with that, Sean and Jeff, in terms of figuring out the legal, maneuvering, assuming that the select board supports going forward.
Well, if they support going forward, then, I mean, Whitewater's our consultant that, they're the operator. And
Yeah,
they can bring it forward, and I can communicate with DEP. I mean,
I don't know if we should we might want to bid it out, Sean. I don't know, for the treatment system design and install. We might want to do a competitive bid on that too. There's other entities that are very familiar with this that I don't know. Is it a conflict of interest? Sort of? I don't know.
I don't know. That's an odd question. A conflict of interest for the public, for the operator of the public water supply to be.
Because they're linked to the cease and desist. I don't know. This is like a
No,
whole.
they're not linked to the cease and desist. The library construction is linked to the cease and desist.
No, I know, but anyway, yeah, I don't know. I mean, don't we usually competitively bid when we're doing something like this?
Not necessarily for all of our professional services. We don't go out to bid every time we're doing our annual public water supply operations.
Right, and I would say since Whitewater was not part of the original well design and installation, that there's not a conflict of interest in that regard.
Yeah,
They
I
are
mean,
the operators.
yeah.
So, but
But I
it
think-
might be reasonable if you say that there are others out there who have been doing enough systems, perhaps of this size, so that they're more
Many.
facile with what the options are, then
And I
That
think
could be
Lisa,
worth it.
I think part of this, and again, like I'm entirely out of my technical wheelhouse, but I think like, it seems like the most striking thing for you is really, if we're talking this is 2 years out, that's where you'd say, boy, that is tough if we're sort of vendor availability limited in installing. That might be the scenario. And again, I don't know that we have a strong Board of Health opinion to say, oh, you should totally bid it out. But I think what you're saying, Lisa, is if Whitewater's saying it will take us 2 years to install it, that may be a scenario that's really reasonable to bid it out, to say there's enough kind of operation in this space that somebody else should be able to do it faster based on your professional experience. Lisa, am I hearing that right?
Yeah, I think it's that plus figuring out a way to segregate the cease and desist from the installation of a treatment system. That they don't need to be linked activities. Doing one doesn't necessarily, compromise the other. So I think we can maybe be a little more creative with that.
Yeah, I think we'll just take it under advisement. I think, because if it's really 60 grand, that would really go to capital budget committee to review, and they always look for bids and things. So we just need to get our ducks in a
At a
row
time.
on the legal side and the financial side.
Yeah.
I think we're conflating the permitting versus the construction. Because
Yes,
Whitewater wouldn't be installing it necessarily.
right.
And if you're talking about putting that out to bid, that's one thing, but
Yeah, that's what, I guess I was misinterpreting. what-
there's an operator of public water supply and you don't just fire them because you want to install a system. So
Oh, yeah, no, agree.
Well.
Agree. Yeah. Okay. All right, good luck.
okay, well, we have a variance hearing coming up in 2 minutes. I'm not sure there's something short enough to squeeze in. So instead, I'm going to ask Ellen if we have the green cards for the variance hearing for the septic alteration at 34 South Main Street.
34 South Main, yes.
Except we should be
Okay.
doing 183 South Main.
Oh, did I say, oh, sorry, 183, you're
Yeah,
right.
okay.
Sorry about that.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
Okay.
but we do have them.
Okay, and it's a septic replacement expansion at 183 South Main. All right, so I'm going to bring up the file for that.
And while you're doing that, Darrell, we do have the
Yep.
homeowner, I believe, here, as well as Dan McIntyre, the engineer, as we all know.
All right, just zoom out for a moment and then just seconds, Dan, you can take it away.
Okay.
Oh, and I don't know if there are any abutters here for this, but basically the engineer is going to present the reasons that variances are being requested, and then there will be questions from the board, perhaps from the agent, some discussion within the board, and then if we haven't touched upon something that you may have a question about, then there'll be an opportunity for that. Okay, Dan.
All right, thank you. For the records, Dan McIntyre representing the homeowners of 183 South Main Street. This was a recently purchased home a few months back. It had a passing Title V inspection on it. But the homeowners wanted to do some renovations, which would have impacted more than 50% of the house. So that triggered a replacement of the system under the Sherborn regulations. So we were retained to design a new septic system. The existing house here over to the left-hand side is South Main Street. There's a well in the front yard here. And the existing septic tank and leach trench is in the backyard near where that shed is located. So since we had to replace the system anyways, we thought it would be an opportune time to make it a 4-bedroom house instead of the existing 3-bedroom house. The lot size was large enough to accommodate that. The soils and the groundwater conditions also supported that larger septic system. So we did find a spot in the back corner of the lot that actually improved the well setbacks. This house was constructed back in the 1960s, long before Sherborn adopted the more stringent well setbacks that they have today. So everything was designed for a 100-foot setback. Currently, that's at least 125. In this case, because of the fast percolating soils we encountered, upgradient wells would have a 150-foot well setback, and downgradient wells would have a 175-foot setback. So we located the new system to accommodate most of those wells. The on-site well, we can fully meet the regulations. One of the abutting wells, we can fully meet the regulations. But there is one well at, I think it's 181, I believe.
Yes, 181 here.
Yes, up at the top of the screen,
Mhm.
where we have just 150 feet. Due to the topography, a portion of the proposed septic system is upgradient of that well, and a portion of it is downgradient of that well. So we took the more conservative approach of saying that it would need a 175-foot setback. We could provide 150, and we're asking for a waiver on the other 25 feet. And what we did is we pushed the system as close to the property line as we could and still meet Title V. So we're requesting a waiver for the property line offset as well in an effort to maximize the offset to the neighbor's well. In any event, the 150-foot that we're proposing is a significant improvement over the 109 feet that well has had to the existing system since the 1960s.
Not
It is
especially the leaching pit. I'll just throw that in there.
exactly. So this is it is a pump system. We got a septic tank in the backyard, flowing down to a pump tank, and then pumping up to the distribution box. And we have conventional stone and pipe trenches along the slope here to accommodate a 4-bedroom. And we had enough land area to include the garbage grinder allowance as well.
And Dan, is it okay if I just ask, I just want to make sure I'm orienting. So the arrow we see kind of going from like 11 o'clock to like 5 o'clock is the well offset to the local well. And so which portion of the SAS is kind of running into the issues? It's just hard for me to sort of orient where is ground zero for 181. I sort of, is it just like that top left corner is in the offset for 181, which is kind of due north of the property?
Yeah, so
Oh,
those,
perfect.
yeah, there it is,
I'm
right
good.
there.
Yep.
So those upper 2 trenches are the ones that are upgradient of 181, and the lower 3 trenches happen to be downgradient of 181. So part of the system would be subject to the 150-foot offset, and part of the system is subject to the 175-foot offset.
Perfect.
Can you actually clarify? maybe I just want to understand. So what's the elevation at the 181 South Main well? Is is it cross gradient or is it really down gradient of those first couple trenches? That's what I'm trying to,
Well, it's right around 169
is where their well is?
is where their well is.
And what's the elevation at the? So,
We-
oh, you're like 170.
171, 172
Yeah,
for the
oh,
upper
okay.
trenches.
Okay.
So it's slightly up gradient.
Yeah.
And so,
hmm.
oh, sorry, Lisa.
No, I'm just, I was having the same issues, Matt. I'm just like trying to really,
I guess for me, that part feels okay. I think
Yeah.
the part that feels different than normal is just we're replacing a non-failed system and we're adding flow. And so I just want to check with Ellen and Mark, is that consistent with what we've done with replacement systems in the past? They're also able to do the +1 that we've used for replacement of a failed system.
If I can add to that. To answer your question, Matt, typically if there's an abutter that has concerns with the additional bedroom related to especially well distances, then that would be something that the board may want to consider. If the abutters do have any concerns. I don't know if there are any abutters here, especially the abutter that the waiver is being requested from, which is 181 South Main, but that would be the consideration.
And sort of in the absence of that, so, I sort of typically think of it as for new construction, we don't do a +1. So let's imagine a family that had a passing Title V system and opted to tear down the house and had a 4-bedroom house. Would we let them say, I'm replacing the system to a 5-bedroom house, even though it wasn't in failure?
I don't know if we've seen one of those yet.
Yeah,
But
I don't believe you would, because any replacement, you would allow the 1-bedroom addition. And if in the future they wanted to tear down the 4-bedroom and go back and make a 5-bedroom, the record.
But we would let them, for the initial replacement, the system being in failure is not the criteria. It's that we let people do a +1 for properly designed replacement
Correct.
system.
that is
Yeah.
Okay.
correct.
I just want to make sure that was consistent. I just hadn't seen that piece before. Thanks, guys.
yeah, I guess I had the same thing. So, but they need a variance for the setback.
Correct.
Right.
So I think that it sounds like, and Ellen, if I've got it wrong, please correct me. The fact that this is a replacement system, and I think there's like a little italicized subtext, which is, I would expect it to outperform substantially a leach pit that is much closer. So we sort of expect the site conditions to be better. We have not historically differentiated whether or not the system was in failure, but have allowed a +1 for a replacement system for either existing systems or replacement systems. Did I get that right, Ellen, in terms of past precedent?
I believe so. I mean, I'm not 100%, but I'm pretty sure.
But
Okay.
I think the distinction, Matt, that I'm inferring that you were getting at, that I'm just wrapping my head around, is that this replacement system is precipitated because the proposed new construction is triggering the greater than 50%. So
Right.
that's the part that seems different to me. So just playing out, what can happen sometimes. So let's say someone was in a house, they didn't have a failed system, they wanted to do a big addition, that was greater than 50%. And so they needed a new system and they needed a variance. Like, I guess I'm just confused in terms
Or
of.
if somebody
Right.
like bought a 3-bedroom house and said, boy, a 3-bedroom house is what was built here, couldn't be built now. What we've typically done is to say, we want to have upside for homeowners to do the right thing.
Right.
And so that's like the 1-bedroom. But if you imagine a scenario where somebody says, oh, I'm building a replacement system, it's not in failure, I'd like to have a 5-bedroom house now. And
Right.
I can build one that's compliant with that, but the construction and the drive behind it is largely a property replacement or a substantial overhaul. that's different than the typical scenario we've seen, where you'd either say, hey, you've got new construction, no variances are needed, that's fine. But at what point does the house stop being the house that was there, particularly as it relates to a non-failed system? In this
Right.
case, I feel totally comfortable with the variances if we're not adding flow. Adding flow is the part that gets sticky for me, particularly with a substantial renovation, less for this specific property and its specific details, but more for how to, is this consistent with what we've done? And how will this apply to future properties? And how do you connect it to say, just because a house was here doesn't mean that you can increase the design flow in a non-failed system. I think part of my struggle is like the new system seems much better than the old system. And
Correct.
so I think that operationally, it's likely that even with an added, bedroom of flow, the local impacts are net improved by this, which is kind of the part that makes me say, I think it's approvable, but that precedent is the part I'm struggling with for this one.
Exactly. Because I don't want people coming to us saying, I want to do a voluntary massive expansion at my property. I'm going to have increased flow. It's going to be better than what's there now in terms of system performance, but it's increased flow and I need a variance because I'm potentially, within not meeting the setback for an adjacent well. So it's that I just want to make sure we're not, doing something here that we've turned people down for in the past. So I totally get though that it's a net positive with this replacement.
And I am not 100% sure this specific type of situation has come up before.
So what I'm thinking, what's important to me about this is, even though I think back when we were rewriting our regs regarding cesspools and leaching pits, that the way Mass DEP defines it is if a cesspool has a trench associated with it, then it sort of falls in a different category. And I actually am contemplating whether we revisit that and change it, because to me, if you've got a leaching pit in front of a trench, I'm not so sure that trench gets used all that much in terms of treating any effluent. So to me, that's a key factor with this, and I think it falls in between not a failed system and a failed system. But that is more of almost a policy decision. At this point, to me, it's a special characteristic of this particular property.
But I guess again, kind of going to the question of precedent, if we said, boy, every time we look at it, again, I would say if we have a big hole in the ground and up near the top is a trench, I guess the trench is used sometimes, that most of it is sort of functionally similar to the cesspool. I think it's okay for it to be in some way specific to the decision we're making, because I think that's different than a categorical system. And for me, if we say that, again, while this doesn't meet a technical definition of Title V failure from the opinion of the board, the fact that functionally it appears to be a cesspool, we're close enough to not make a difference that then we're in a failed system where it's sort of concordant, and we wouldn't otherwise put limitations on it other than the +1 bedroom.
Yes, that's pretty much how I'm thinking about it, is that would be the condition that would compel me to consider the variances for this.
If I could, I think we did do something along this lines last year at 92 Lake Street, where the system was not in failure, but they wanted to add, they wanted to add rooms, which would have triggered the room count method would have got them up to 4 to 5 bedrooms. In that instance, we went out and did soil testing to determine that the existing system was adequate for the larger size house. And it was granted they did not have a failed system, but they were granted the +1 on that one.
But isn't that not the same?
Well, when you're just talking about having to have a failed system to get the +1, that would be that scenario. 92 Lake Street did not have a failed system, but they were granted the +1.
Right, but did they need any variances? That's what I can't remember.
I don't believe they did need any variances. no.
Right, and so that's my only
Mhm.
question, Dan. That's the whole thing I'm grappling with right now.
So the other part, it feels like we've got a little bit of chewing to do on this, and I also recognize we have the other scheduled variance hearings. Ellen, what's the proper way for us to handle this? Since I think we have a 7:45, do we need to continue this at the 8 o'clock slot?
Yes, you can continue it and go back to it whenever there's time, yeah.
I just want to be sensitive to the fact that, like, I sort of don't want to have every variance hearing like half an hour late.
Yeah.
Does that sound like a reasonable approach, since we know that the 8 o'clock will
Yep,
be open and closed?
yep.
Okay, so
I'm
let's,
sorry, I'm the homeowner there. Can I just ask a quick question? Thank you everyone so much for your time. My name is Jen. I just have to put my kids to sleep and I really want to participate in this. So are you saying to come back at 8 o'clock?
Yes, we have a 7:45, so we need to do their variance hearing on time too. But we
Okay.
know that the 8 o'clock variance hearing, we have to open procedurally, but all the steps haven't been satisfied. So
Okay.
it will be immediately closed. So if you come back at like 8:01, we should be back on your property.
Okay, great. So I can get them to bed. And then just to confirm too, so is the only hindrance right now that you're unsure about the 4-bedroom septic because the house didn't actually pass the Title V? And so I just want to make sure that I'm relaying to the powers that be that we're working with, sort of what is.
I think that's what we're struggling with. I think there's two parts. I think one is that we're requesting variances for a system, which in
Yep.
general we do when we're doing a failed system. And the rationale for that is that you can then presume that the compliance system outperforms the failed system. For a non-failed system, you can't necessarily make the same assumption. They're looking at the specifics of your property.
Yep.
That's what it looks like. Like, I think what you have is better than what you have today. But that's part of what we're struggling with, less for your property, more so for, we can't decide different things with different properties unless we do so consistently. And so that's what we just have to do, is to make sure that whatever we're doing for your specific project is consistent with what we've done in the past and what we'd be comfortable doing in the future on a broader scale.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, sorry to interrupt the hearing, and we'll see you in a little bit.
That sounds good. Thank you. Thank you, Dan.
all right.
All right.
Okay, so we're going to continue this to the next open slot, Dan, which hopefully will be shortly after 8. So right now we have a variance hearing for 34 South Main Street for a septic alteration. And let me just pull up. Oh, do we have all the green cards, Ellen?
Yes, we'll do. It's all set.
Okay. And I did see Paul log in. So Paul, if you would like to.
I think it's me. I don't know who that Paul is.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right.
Eric.
It's an
Okay,
imposter,
Eric.
Paul. Yeah. Unless he's spying on me.
I hope not. We don't need
I
any.
know.
Okay. So
Okay,
Eric,
so-
would you like to give an introduction to the issues?
Yes, my name is Eric Dickinson. I'm with Civilized Solutions. I'm here on behalf of the two homeowners, John Conte and Monica Williams. As you can see, they're on. This was a septic system. This is 34 South Main. It's across from the Catholic Church, St. Teresa's. This was a septic system, a 2-bedroom system we designed in 2016, and I believe it went in 2018. In the front right there. It had a lot of variances. It was, it has a deed restriction limiting it to 2 bedrooms. As you can see, there was conservation involved, and it wasn't an easy one. It had 2 sheds in the backyard at the time, as you can see back there. The new homeowners would like to raise those 2 sheds and construct a 450 approximate square foot workout room with a half bathroom in it. this would require connecting the bathroom to the existing septic tank. Now that septic tank just so happens to be 60 feet away, and there's a local regulation that no septic tank can be located more than 50 feet from the structure it serves. So that's why we are here. The plans are pretty far along with the architect, and they would moving it closer would require a lot of other issues. So we would like you to and sorry, my son just ran in the room. We'd like you to consider the variance to go from 50 feet to 60 feet.
Okay, Mark, do you want to comment?
Sure. This plan we've had for a little bit now, and I don't see any issues. The board has seen the proposed new structure, and as Eric noted, it's to be a half bath. And I think they're putting a cedar closet in, or a closet where the tub or a shower was originally planned. I would recommend approval of the waiver based on the fact it prevents the need to move the tank that's already presently there. So I don't see an issue with this plan and recommend approval.
And are there any, there are no bends in this pipe run, so is there anything else special that you'd recommend? A clean out, some other kind of access point?
No,
Or
I see this being a straight pipe. I don't see an issue.
I did put a clean out about halfway down. But if you go right over from the back corner of
yes,
the house.
Oh, yeah.
A little dot there. I'm sorry. Yeah,
Yeah,
there is a
right
clean out
here.
there for the length of the pipe. Yeah.
All right. Okay, does anyone else have any other questions on the board? And any abutters have any questions? All right. Okay, so I think we'll move on to the variance request. Do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 13.0.1?
So moved. Second.
Any other comments?
Thank you.
We like
All
that.
right.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, so voting. All those in favor?
Matt Beaver's aye.
Lisa, I.
Matt Vitale, aye.
And Daryl, I. Okay.
Yay.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yay, happy people.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, no problem.
Have a good night,
Last
guys.
piece of the puzzle for us is right here.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
All right.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Good
Hi,
night.
Derek.
Okay. All right, let's see. Imagine that, bonus time. So we could start, but I don't believe that the property owner is available. So let's see if we can squeeze in. How fast of a COVID update could you do, Matt?
Things are kind of the same, sometimes better, sometimes worse. So in terms of COVID update, you know, what we've seen for our local numbers was definitely an uptick. I think we talked briefly at the last meeting, you know, that there was definitely some transmission that was related to kind of extracurricular exposure. I previously shared with the board just the kind of publicly reported DS data, but I, you know, again, showed that a kind of acute period of transmission that's now kind of gone back to background. I think overall the patterns we're seeing continue to be a migration with antigen testing, where we'll tend to see higher positivity rates than we did before, because the threshold for non-PCR testing, I think, has gone down. There's certainly some signals that suggest we're in an uptick in the Northeast, including local wastewater data is sort of trending up. I think it'll take some time to see how that intersects with summer and kind of those patterns. But I think no big substantial changes since we last met in mid-March, and the kind of extracurricular related pattern seems like it was pretty rapidly contained and managed. I think the district worked in part to help facilitate testing access for folks and students who are in that kind of zone of possible exposure, which I think is a great use of the antigen tests. I don't have a breakdown of how many kids were symptomatic versus asymptomatic and testing out of caution or kind of other kind of household members or attendees. So it'll be interesting to see what the data shows tomorrow. My hope is that we'll kind of be downtrending, and if and given the certain dates of the report, I think that's possible. And if not, then I would expect next week.
Okay, and so this ties into this second item under chair's business of guidance for town meeting, because there have been concerns expressed by people who would be normally attending town meeting, and they're tying it together somewhat with also the event that seemed to have precipitated a number of cases taking place in the same venue that the town meeting would be.
I think, just to be clear, Daryl, I don't know that the pattern of exposure was specific to this as a congregate performance event versus ancillary activities outside of the event itself.
And leading up to the event.
Right. So like,
Okay.
I think that for the patterns of exposure, I have not heard about wild transmission within the audience or community outside of household members or other pieces. So the patterns of transmission that seem the most consistent is, I think there's probably some secondary transmission, but I suspect it was more lots of one-on-one time outside of the performance itself. So I wouldn't infer that those two patterns would necessarily follow each other.
I actually have something to add on to that, Matt.
Sure.
I do know of several adults who were impacted by the high school musical, and they all did makeup and hair and were literally in the face of the students for.
So I would ban hair and makeup doing at town meeting.
They were literally.
Nobody at town meeting gets their makeup done.
Yeah. They
Sorry,
were literally backstage for hours prior to the performance. So none of these people were in the audience. All the adults I know who, contracted COVID, they were all doing hair and makeup on students. So I think it's a very different scenario from being in a well-ventilated space, in the audience with other adults, versus how the transmission appears to have occurred at the musical. I don't think they're at all similar.
And I'll also say that when this sort of happened, we went back to the sort of facilities people at the district regarding the ventilation in the space, because you recall that audit happened, gosh, almost a couple of years back now. And they felt like there were no specific concerns with that space from the ventilation. And so I do agree. I think this was, and we weren't seeing big sort of numbers in the audience, if any. And so I think this really was related to specific interactions specific to this event rather than something about the space.
And even with that, do we want to say anything like we would recommend masks for those who so desire additional protection?
I think people are always entitled to make their own choices about wearing masks. And if you're, older and or immunocompromised or uncomfortable, sure, wear your N95. But I guess, that's always an option. No one's ever going to prevent someone from wearing it. But do we need to make a blanket recommendation? I don't know. I'm kind of ambivalent.
Yeah, I sort of agree. I think there's nothing sort of particular about this than there isn't about any other congregate setting in which I think the general guidance applies, which is that if you feel you're at risk, you should wear a mask.
I would echo that. I think for me, like, I intend to, sort of attend town meeting, and I suspect that, for my personal, approach to risk, like, I don't mind wearing a mask, so I probably will. I also continue to wear a mask to the grocery store, and most people don't. And I think, that makes me more comfortable. But I think it's okay to say, I don't think that we need to impose it as a requirement of the board. And I don't know that people will sort of say, well, what does the board recommend to guide their own behaviors? Like, I think If we don't recommend anything, I'm still gonna wear a mask because it's how I'll be most comfortable. But if we do say it, I don't think the non-mask wearers will be like, well, the board said it, like I'm gonna do it now. And so I would sort of leave it to the town meeting organizers. I certainly, you know, I would support having masks accessible at the doorway if somebody gets there and says like, whoa, this is a lot of people. I don't think those would be N95s or K95s, but you know, having at least surgical masks available on site would be appealing. But I don't know that we need to make a formal, you should do this.
Okay, and do we want to have anybody check with the schools, such as the town clerk who helps set up this event, just to verify that the ventilation system is running that evening?
I think that makes a ton of sense. And I think the other thing
Jeff has
to
his
just-
hand up, by the way.
Oh, I think the other thing I'd recommend exploring, Daryl, that might be another supplement is, I think they also have some additional freestanding HEPA filters that they're able to move within the school. And so that might be another helpful supplement for that space to just, you know, kind of add layers if that's feasible.
Okay, Jeff?
I was just gonna add, I know you have an 8 o'clock hearing. One thing that's on the select board agenda tomorrow night is we're trying to decide if we need to lower the quorum. Our quorum, as you know, is normally 100. And so we can't have the meeting unless we have 100. And for the 2 town meetings in DPW garage, we lowered it. I can't remember, I think to 20. So, because you don't want to get, 80 people there, then throw them out. But you don't want 20 people deciding what 4,400 people in town are going to have impacted with 20 people decision makers. So we're trying to gauge, I mean, if there's really much fewer people there, then we can also probably spread people out, even though it's the same airflow system. We might be able to have people, seated at least 6 feet apart in the whole auditorium that seats 400 if we only have 60 people there.
So it sounds like our to-dos are, would recommend availability of surgical masks for those who arrive and have a change of heart. Encourage the town, or ask the town clerk to work with the facilities team at the district to confirm that the ventilation will be functioning and to determine if additional supplementary ventilation can be put in place with the portable HEPA filters. Does that sound right to folks?
Yep.
Yep.
Awesome.
All right. So we're going to go to the 8 o'clock variance hearing for 21 to 23 South Main Street. It's for a septic replacement. And this is going to be a little different than our normal hearing. Actually, Mark, why don't you explain what the issues are? In essence, it's not ready for a variance hearing this evening.
And
one request I would make is, if the reason we're not having the hearing is because the butters weren't notified, or just ask Mark to keep your comments broad, so nobody says you talked about it when I wasn't there.
And I was just going to lead into that and ask that Ellen maybe update us on the status of the abutter notification.
Yes, I believe it was Monday, the engineer sent an email with revised plans, a revised variance request letter. And in his email, he stated that they would not be attending tonight's meeting because they did not notify the abutters for the previous variance requests. So I responded that this hearing would not be able to go forward with no abutter notification being provided.
Okay.
I thought is we should just open and close it.
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah, you have to open it because it's a scheduled hearing.
Right. And then the answer to the green cards is no.
No,
So
the hearing is closed.
all right. So we're opening the variance hearing for 21 to 23 South Main Street, septic replacement. And then for the reasons just stated, we are going to close the hearing. And just so you know, this property is being, an issue is being rescheduled for May.
And actually, you're not really even opening it. Is typically it's before the hearing is opened. You asked me if a butter note.
Yeah, the green cards have been
So
received.
here,
So.
no, the hearing is not opened. No hearing is taking place.
Oh, okay. All right.
Perfect. Thanks, Ellen.
All right. So this means that we can return to 183 South Main Street discussion. So we will reopen that discussion. And where did we leave off? We're debating. Hold on,
Dan McIntyre had just noted about 92 Lake Street that they wanted.
Yes.
That system was not in failure and they were given the +1, but it had no variances.
Right. But again, I can't recall the detailed circumstances of that. So again, the motivator for me, as I've described, is that this is a leaching pit. And so therefore it's failed in my perspective, but
Jennifer,
not by our regulations or by Title V.
Can I ask just a clarifying question if Jennifer's back or if the builder's present? I see Jennifer.
I am here. My husband's actually quite sick right now, so I'm
No,
here.
no. I think in terms of the existing footprint of the house, my mental model of this based on previous discussions is that there's a substantial portion of the footprint of the existing home that's being modified, but that there are not substantial changes to the foundation of the existing home.
Absolutely. So really what I can say is we're not adding anything right now. I mean, down the road, I think I said in my email, we have 2 little ones and I'm pregnant with another one. So it'd be nice to have the option down the road if we did want to expand. But currently we just took walls down and moved bedrooms around, but we haven't changed the square footage.
Perfect. That's super helpful. And so
okay,
kind of going back to the point, if it's okay, if I don't want to cut anybody else on the board off. For me, that feels like an important consideration to go along with Daryl's, which is that I think there are changes in the design flow as it relates to the future barn. With that 1-bedroom living space or however that plays out, like if we're going from a 3 to a 4-bedroom system, it's clearly an expansion. But for the question of precedent, I think that in this one where we'd say, functionally this is more like a cesspool than a septic system, that would have automatically failed the property. We would have required the steps that are being taken and we would have granted the variances in the bedroom. It makes me feel better that we've got an existing house on an existing foundation and that the sort of distinction of failed system versus it passed Title V, but so would a cesspool, and we said that we're failing those. I get that part's different and that part's sticky, but I feel like that precedent I would be comfortable with saying, this is a system that we as a board are looking at or assessing and are saying, we think that this is sort of functioning failure, though passing Title V, the same way that we did from a regulatory standpoint to say, even if Title V says cesspools are allowed, we don't think they perform well enough.
right. That makes sense. Okay.
And so to others on the board, I don't know if I'm right. What are your reactions or what are you guys thinking?
I feel like
it's fine. Go ahead, Matt.
I feel like for me, I agree with Daryl. I think that this is effectively I can see this being a functionally failed system, even if it sort of technically meets the letter of our regulations. And so for that reason, I'm comfortable with doing this and not setting a broader precedent other than for a similar system that is functionally in failure. And maybe we should discuss whether we specifically amend our regulations to address this type of system. But that can be done later. But I think for now, I think I would be fine doing this given what it's replacing.
Yeah, and I guess I think I'm in agreement with you, Matt B. But it would be helpful to, I guess, I don't know if we were explicitly articulate about this in the cesspool regulation, and but if we could just clarity around, like, even though this passed Title V, it's functionally it's an outmoded technology, what was there. And so we're going to consider it a failure regardless of the fact of whether or not passed Title V. That I think would be cleaner, because I guess my only concern is down the road, setting a precedent for allowing variances for new construction or significant expansion of system and flow. That's all I don't want this to lead to.
And that's why I want to capture it in our discussion, that this is a key point, because we often have to look at things that there's so many variables to take into account, and we are looking in the gray area a lot and trying to determine, where something falls. And so this is a perfect example, and also an excellent segue into our discussion later about potential regulatory revisions. So the other thing I want to ask is, Mark, I don't know if you've had a chance to review floor plans.
I have in the past. They submitted a building application in the past, and I think it actually got to one of our agendas as well. And
okay.
So, but they know that they can't do any work on what they presented until, one, this plan gets approved. Two, I'm going to recommend that there be a waiver when it comes up for the well. I'm going to recommend that be raised above grade, as we've done with another project in town, another property.
So that's happening Friday. We scheduled that on your recommendation.
Okay, great. And
yeah,
that isn't required yet. It's up to the board when they go through the waiver, but that would be the recommendation to the board by me, that they would add that as a condition, to put in a well casing up to 18 inches above grade and a well apron that goes around the well. It can be made out of earth. It's not a difficult thing to do, but by a licensed well driller. And then back to the question, Daryl, I was going to note that it's been noted on the building permit that no work is to be conducted until this plan's approved and a pre-construction meeting is set with the engineer and installer, and it starts construction. Once construction starts, then I can approve their request for the 3 bedrooms within. I don't know if that's changed at all. I think they were planning a bedroom over the garage. I don't know if that's still going to be part of the process, but once I go back to that building application, I'll approve it up to rough electrical if the septic system is started, and they'll have to have it constructed and in place before the rough electrical condition is taken off.
And can I ask one just follow-up question, Dan? I think when you were going over this, you mentioned that this is designed for a garbage grinder.
Yes.
I guess, one comment I'd make, Jennifer, I don't know what your sort of live life with septic systems is before, but sort of think about it like all of this is bacteria breaking down waste. And if it's no garbage grinder, it means that I got the first crack at it. And if you've got a garbage grinder, the likelihood, even with a very well-designed system, of your system potentially deteriorating or failing over time goes up, just because it's not pre-digested by people before it's kind of hitting the environment. And so I would, I don't think I'm at a place where it's a condition, because I think for the things we've described, it wouldn't be a condition generally, but I would sort of strongly encourage you, even if you get a design for a garbage grinder, not to install one.
You compromise the performance and the longevity of your system by using a garbage grinder.
And with this lot,
thank you.
And with this lot in particular, especially, I think Dan's done a lovely job designing it, but it really highlights it's a tricky lot. And so you really would love for the system to sort of do well in the long haul. And even if the capacity is designed, not installing that is your best shot at doing that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And it's pretty easy to compost out here where you have a lot of land. Doesn't take much land. The stuff disintegrates into next to nothing in no time at all. So I'll also mention that. Does beg the question, if the system was 50% smaller, or no, it'd be about a third smaller, right? Because it's a 50% add-on. But anyway, would you need the offset, the variance?
I think we'd still need the well variance, right?
Yeah,
unless they were narrow trenches. I mean, shorter trenches, not more narrow.
No, but that, because we got to get to 175. right?
Right, we'd have to, we've got 30-foot long trenches now. To get that other 25 feet would end up with 5-foot trenches.
Yeah, that's right.
Does not
25
make
is not.
sense.
Yeah, okay. All right. Oh, the reason I asked about the floor plans, Mark, is let's say right now it's a 3-bedroom, 8-room house. And then the barn, and I'm just throwing this out there as I don't know what the condition is going to be. But if it was a living space on the first floor and then a bedroom on the second floor, that would be 10 rooms. That would not be possible. So I just want to be mindful of what your plans are in the future to see if the 4 is even meeting your expectations for what you want to build out in the future.
You'll never use the lower level of the garage.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dan.
No, I think I had this discussion with Sergio about the room count method. If we start to go over 8 rooms, we're required to count up the total number of rooms to determine bedrooms. So on a 4-bedroom system, you're really limited to 9 rooms total, which is what I put on the design criteria of the septic system. We added 2 things on the design criteria. One is that we did design for a garbage grinder, but we recommend that we don't install it. And we do that just because the regulations suggest that we design bigger for a garbage grinder. And the second is the room count, that you're limited to 9 rooms total between the house and the barn, if the barn is built in the future.
Yeah, I think we can absolutely work with that. I think in currently, I just want to get my family into a 3-bedroom, and then we're on a day-to-day basis right now trying to get through this. So, but that's really helpful to know. So thank you.
So it sounds like we've sort of gotten in a place where, again, I don't want to put words in folks' mouths. On the septic, we're good. I was struggling a little bit with the well and the footings. I think the only other time that I remember us talking about that was for the property where it was a question for basement windows, whether, that sort of well obstruction, like the well to protect the window counted. And so the 9 versus 10 feet for the well from the porch, which will be on footings. Did others on the board have a reaction to that one way or another?
I did, and I think part of it though is that the porch is on pier foundation. Is that correct, Mark? That's a distinction versus
Yes, it is on piers.
basement wall.
And the piers, there will be no pier that is less than 10 feet from the well.
I didn't measure from the piers to the well, but I think that's accurate. The 9 feet is from the porch to the well, and I don't think there's a pier right at that location where I measured.
And so I would say I think I struggle a little bit because it describes a projection from the house in the regulation. But on the flip
Right.
side, I would also say, is the porch is an outdoor space, correct?
Yes.
That is correct.
And so again, I think if somebody had a second floor deck, for example, that projected out over, sort of cantilevered out, I don't know that we'd say, this counts. And so if none of the piers are within 10 feet and it was an outdoor structure, those are sort of my comfort zone for it. I felt okay with. And it sounds like both of those are met, although I'd like to confirm that there's no, because if we say there's piers and they're 8 feet, away, like that would not be my favorite. But again, if the 9-foot measure is to the edge of the porch, that should be hopefully not an issue. But if we can just confirm that.
I can't confirm it right now, but we can certainly.
I think we
confirm
could do it
at
as a
some point.
conditional.
Okay, I can Sergio's in bed very sick, but I'm going to text him. I know it's not 8 feet because we've had this conversation preliminarily. Just because, yeah.
He can totally just be in bed and be miserable. The way we can do it is we can do a conditional approval to Mark. We'll then confirm those details, and then when that's confirmed, can release it to you.
Okay.
Does that, again, I don't mean to.
And
put-
Mark, does that make sense to you?
Yes, and as the board noted, we've seen something of this nature before on Western Ave just last year. So pretty much the same concept, that the condition would be that they put a well casing in 18 inches above grade and put the well apron in as well.
I mean, the difference here, though, is that there's not a pre-existing nonconformity, right? This is
Well,
the
this was
creation of a nonconformity, correct?
unfortunately, they came in with a building application. I think it was in November, December, requesting the porch, and they signed a negative impact statement that said there was no well within 10 feet of it. Unfortunately, that was missed when they signed that certificate.
I think, isn't there an existing nonconformity because the well is already 9 feet from the house? And so if we're saying no pier is less than 10 feet from the well,
Mhm.
then it seems like we could then say we had a baseline nonconformity of 9 feet. We've got nothing that's closer than 10 feet.
But I think the house is further back.
Yes, the house
The-
is about,
The porch is being added on.
yes.
Oh, okay. I'm just misreading the plan.
Yeah, that red line is new construction, I think, for the edge of the porch.
That is correct, Matt B.
Yeah, and
So
the
I mean,
9 feet, I think, goes from tip to tip of
Yeah.
the arrows.
So for me, I think as long as, I mean, the issue really is digging near the well. So I think as long as the pier is placed more than 10 feet, I'm okay with that.
And there's, and one of the other reasons for the setback is to allow ready access to take care of the well if it needs some kind of work in the future. But it appears, I don't know for sure, I think it's kind of flat over there, that there should be access from other sides. It's not
Yeah,
particularly
that's open
constrained.
lawn area right there, so it's actually very good access to that well, even with the porch.
And if I can, while we're on the well, Dan, just to let you know, what we're going to require for well regulations is that they extend that well 18 inches off the ground. It can't be to the grade. It has to be off the grade by 18 inches with an appropriate well top to it. It's a cover as well, appropriate cover. So that's the only difference where your plan says to grade. It would be a well casing 18 inches from grade is how they have to do it. And that way the well is always visible, and then they secure the base with the well apron, and we can go over that, but a well driller does need to do that and certify that work.
So are you saying that the actual steel casing of the well needs to be extended up, or are you talking about?
That is correct. That's what I'm going to recommend. Well, I'm going to recommend that. That's what we require in our well regulations.
Okay.
And because they're asking for a waiver to it, that's why a well driller would have to get out there, weld this new casing onto the existing casing, and it would extend 18 inches out of grade. It can go higher, but not less.
Okay, I understood it to be putting like a well tile around the existing casing, but that's different than what you're saying. You're saying actually extend the steel casing up.
That's correct, yes. That's what I'm recommending to the board for the as a condition to the approval.
Is that practical though?
Yeah, we have had that done just recently on Western Ave where they wanted, the projection was too close to the well. So they can dig it up and weld on a new casing, and they bring it 18 inches above grade, and then they put a sanitary seal cover over the top of that.
Right, okay.
And
That's
you could
why
make it
they're
into
well
an
drilled.
art sculpture somehow. No limitations on that.
You're always trying to put a positive spin on things, aren't you, Daryl?
Well, I know if it was in the front of my house, I might be inclined to do that, so.
They actually have fake rocks and everything, other things you can put around it. So there are ways to make it look attractive. You could even put like an old well house, old well style fashioned well, you know, the old fashioned.
Like a pump, yeah.
Yeah, with the barrel that comes down around the like little fence around it. That could be another idea.
I don't want to put words in Jennifer's mouth, but I think the day that's the biggest problem, we have been wildly successful and life is good.
Thank you very much. I needed to hear that. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions before we go to the voting on the variance requests? And that's including from outside the board. Okay, hearing none, we will move on. Of course, there's still opportunity for comment. All right, do we have, and this is regarding the well offset to the neighboring well. Do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 10.1? The notations there, B and C?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other comments?
Darrow, did you ask if there were any abutters at this meeting?
I did earlier,
Okay.
and I did open it up to comments from outside the board as well. All right, any other, no other comments? All right, ready to vote? Matt?
Yep.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Matt Vitale, aye.
And Daryl, aye. And, oh, again, my comment on that would have been, this is certainly influenced by the leaching pit component of the current system. All right, do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 10.2?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other comments? Matt?
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Matt Vitale, aye.
And Daryl, aye. Okay, and regarding the well, do we have a motion to grant a variance to 6.0E?
So moved.
Second.
And I should have said this would be conditional to Mark's review of pier locations relative to the well.
Agreed.
Okay, and any other comments?
Just that, the note I made earlier, Darrell, that the well casing be brought up
Yes.
18 inches above grade with the well apron below it as per our requirements and done by a licensed well driller.
All right, do we have a motion to add those two conditions onto the first motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, final comments? Take it away, Matt.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Matt Vitale, aye.
And Daryl, aye. Okay, so we will close the hearing. And are the plans ready for approval, Mark?
Yes, they are. And the board already noted it was designed for a garbage grinder. As the engineer noted, I recommend that the garbage grinder not be installed. And also that there will be no need for a deed recording on that part. And that's pretty much it. And the board's aware this is for one additional bedroom, as was discussed, and that has been placed into the design as well.
Mm-hmm. And unless a future system could meet all current requirements, there wouldn't be other expansion possible. So it's kind of a one-bedroom credit.
Yeah, correct, Darrell. I'm glad you mentioned that. Just so it's on the record, they can't get additional flow from that additional, the additional gallonage for the garbage grinder. That's not allowed by the state nor the local regulations. So this is limited to the 4 bedrooms. There's no, even though there's extra capacity in that septic system, it's not for further bedrooms at this, per the requirements.
Mm-hmm. And per current DEP guidance on that.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the plans?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other comments? Okay, Matt?
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Matt Vitale, aye.
And Daryl, aye. And thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Any other? Okay. If you have
All right.
other questions, contact Mark.
Thank you so much, Mark. I'll reach out to you right away. Dan, thank you all so much for your time and for taking so much time on our house. I really appreciate it so much.
You're welcome. And I would just ask Dan to put a stake where the well is if it's underground so I can measure it off. But outside of that, I won't need anything else. And we'll await the pre-construction with Dan and the installer so we can keep you moving with the building permit.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you so, so much. We're excited to finally move in. So we'll have a big party and everyone. Thank you
All right,
again.
well, welcome to town.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Okay, it's 8:31 and we have a variance hearing for 53 Elliott Street for a septic replacement expansion. And lo and behold, Dan, you're up again.
Yes.
Oh, Ellen, have we received the green cards?
Yes.
Okay, so we will open the hearing. Let me pull up a document and then Dan could speak to it. Let me just get the locus map. Okay.
Yeah, so this this lot is right at the intersection of Lake Street and Elliott Street. It's currently served by a cesspool. The homeowners are not selling, they're not moving, but they've kind of come to the conclusion that the cesspool is just not functioning the way they would like it to, and they're just nervous that something may happen, so they'd like to upgrade the system to a Title V septic system. So there's a few constraints on the lot. One is the topography of the lot. There's also wetlands on the property, and also the location of the existing well kind of triggers some constraints on this. The well is exactly in the backyard down by the wetlands. The cesspool is off to the right-hand side of the house where the new septic tank is located. There's a cesspool right in that general area. Further down toward the red septic tank down there.
Oh, yep.
Right in there. So we're proposing to locate the septic system up in the front yard, which is currently kind of an existing paved driveway, that kind of a circular driveway around the front that really isn't used anymore, because coming out of that other entrance is fairly dangerous at that intersection. So that's been blocked off for a while, and it really opens up the front yard to be used for a leaching system, and they're proposing to change the front yard from pavement to grass and provide a separate, smaller turnaround on the driveway to get in and out. So due to the plumbing in the house, we can't really change that. So the septic tank is going to go where the existing cesspool is located, and then we're going to pump up to the front yard area. And that area really maximizes the offset to both the wetlands and the well, but certainly not enough to meet the current Sherborn regulations. Again, we're in an area of very sandy soils. The well is down gradient, so we're into that 175-foot setback. And we also have that 125-foot setback to wetlands, which we're asking a waiver on. But I think the front yard really is the appropriate location for this system. We did design a Title V compliant septic system. We are showing a separate reserve area over to the left-hand side of the property, which meets the requirements for reserve area, but I wouldn't design that as the primary area. I think the front yard is really the better location for that. It's leveler, it's more offset to the groundwater table, so it's just a better performing area for the leach field. But as I mentioned, we are asking for a couple of waivers. One is to the well. Obviously, we've got 102 feet versus the 175 feet. We also have 102 feet to the wetlands versus 125 feet. And in order to maximize offset to both the wetlands and the well, we're asking for a reduction in the 20-foot offset to the property line. We're asking that to go down to 16 feet or 14 feet, I'm sorry, in order to meet the minimum 100 feet off the well. But other than that, it's as I say, it's a Title V compliance system with the 1,500 gallon tank, pump tank, and stone leaching trenches.
Okay, I'll note that you've managed to find another property with a remarkable number of challenges.
But again, I think it's a vast improvement over what's there now.
Oh, yes.
Which is a good thing.
Mm-hmm. No, it's impressive. There's really not much land left. Once you take into account the setbacks, the road, it's tough. But it looks reasonable to me.
We do meet setbacks to all the abutting wells in this particular location.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just the on-site well that we're concerned about.
And Conservation Commission has already approved.
Yes, they have.
Location.
Daryl, if I can, you do have a hand raised. I don't know if you're planning to take comments now or during the process.
We'll have the board and then we can move on. So anyone else on the board have a question or comment?
Nothing for me.
Okay, I'll note that I'm pleased that this additional well will be addressed. I don't know what its function has been up until now, but proper abandonment will be good.
Yeah,
outcome of this.
I appreciated that as well. And I think it's unusual and a good use of space for the front yard. Like that's definitely not a typical scenario for the placement of the trenches, but it sounds like it makes sense for this lot.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Barbara, would you like to comment?
Hi, yes, I'm the abutter at 47 Lake Street, which according to your notes is an up gradient from the septic. Our well is up gradient from the septic system.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering what that means. And is it within, I mean, it says 150, which I'm guessing is the requirement, but I just wanted to comment on that.
Okay, so I'll let Dan address it, but just so you know, the 150 would be the, because of the sandy soils, Dan, the minimum distance that we prefer to see for distance from a septic to a well. But then there's another, I don't know how many feet, if you can estimate quickly, Dan, but it's beyond the 150.
Right.
Yeah, it may even meet the 175 in this.
Yeah, this is 150 and then that's more.
So Barbara, the regulations, the minimum offset in Sherborn is 125 feet for a well. But if the well is up gradient based on the topography at a higher elevation in the septic system, it automatically adds 25 feet to that, so it would be 150 feet. And then if the percolation rate of the soils is less than 3 minutes per inch, then the town adds another 25 feet to that to get us up to 175 feet. So your particular well is up gradient based on topography, so you would hit that 150-foot requirement, which we easily meet with this respect.
And if I can add, Dan, to your scaled plan, there's another 35 plus feet from that 150-foot measurement. So it's about 185 feet per the scaled plan.
And then Dan, can you just comment on what the state minimum would be? Because I think that's helpful context for people too.
What was that, Matt?
The state minimum.
The state minimum, because again, we're even, from Barbara's point
More
of view,
stringent.
the plan as proposed exceeds the Sherborn regulations in even a more conservative scenario than here. And the Sherborn regulations also exceed the state. So I think that, sort of as a
More
butter in this
protective.
ratio, I'd say you're well served by the local regulations, but even beyond that, the sort of added benefit to not having a cesspool and having a septic system from a wetland perspective, whether or not it's the well perspective, is also much better. So I think for you, this is likely a net positive effect for the plan as proposed, and no variances related to your property line or your well setback.
And you mentioned a new well on this property?
So I think they're actually abandoning a well. So this well, I think
An
had
old well.
Yeah, so there's an existing well that's sort of in the foreground on the left that needs to be properly abandoned. And so that's also a good thing, because having wells that are not abandoned introduces a risk of groundwater contamination. So having that properly closed off prevents that being a point of contamination for potentially the well on the property, as well as abutters who may share a kind of similar source area.
Okay.
So also a net positive.
Barbara, did you understand the upgradient explanation? I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
I just thought I should ask.
No, good. We like questions.
And also this system should perform treatment of the effluent far better than the cesspool.
I don't know if the owners are here, but it was for sale last fall. I don't know if it passed papers, but just so you know.
Okay.
As far as I know, they're gonna stay there. It's actually it's owned by the son of the people that live there now.
Okay, so any other comments or questions, or are we ready to move on to voting? Ready, okay. Yeah. All right. Yes. Okay, do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 10.1 BC?
So moved.
Second.
And any other comments? I'll just note that the variance is to the on-site well, and so we always prefer to see that over to a neighbor's well. So Matt, go ahead.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Matt Vitale, aye.
And Daryl, aye. And I will note that I saw Rebecca connect, but since she wasn't here for the discussion about the property, I think she'll be abstaining. Okay, do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 10.2?
So moved.
Second.
Any other comments?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Matt Vitale, aye.
And Daryl, aye. And do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 10.2?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any comments? I'll note that Conservation Commission has reviewed this and approved it, so we're pretty much following on their guidance. Go ahead, Matt.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Matt Vitale, aye.
And Daryl, aye. Okay, so we'll close the hearing. And are the plans ready for approval, Mark?
Yes, they are. They are ready for approval, and as noted on the plan, one of the conditions will be to properly continue with the abandonment of the well near the septic system, but I am recommending the plans to be approved as presented.
Okay, and is there a garbage grinder restriction?
Oh, yes, and yeah, this one, let's see, I have written
Well,
down.
this is another one with a soil.
Yeah, no, Thank you, Dan. I'm looking because I always write it on the side if it needs a deed recording now, but again, their soil was very permeable, so they designed for a garbage grinder. And as Dan, he did not actually, Dan, I have here.
I think we made a typo on the.
Yeah,
on
you
the
did. Okay,
plan,
that's
though.
what we talked about yesterday. So this is designed for a garbage grinder, even though it says it's not. And, but it's not recommended. I'm sure that's what Dan would state.
That's what I intended.
Yeah, that's fine. That's not really, that's, as you said, a typo to some degree, but it is designed for a garbage grinder, but not recommended.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the plans conditional to the abandonment of the well and I guess a typo correction on the final, maybe the as-built? Any need for it to be earlier than as-built, Mark?
I think that would be appropriate. That's not a problem.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? Okay, Matt?
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Matt Vitale, aye.
Daryl, aye. All right. Well, thank you, Dan.
Thank you very much.
Daryl, before Dan leaves, I know we have a couple minutes.
Yeah.
We have item number 14 that Dan's involved with. That's 14 Brook Street. And I did ask Dan if he could maybe comment on that. Would that be okay to use that time for number 8 on the agenda under my business?
Mhm.
So Dan, you're here if you want a couple things. The plan, minor modifications on the pumping, how often it pumps per day, but I'll let Dan go over that. But the other note is that this plan was to start for the construction within 2 years of the failure, which was, I believe, April 22nd. I spoke to the state, and the state did say that the board can grant an additional time period for the installation of the system. And that would obviously be conditional to it not having any backup into the house or breakout into the yard. And I believe, Dan, you or someone indicated to me there's no backup in the house or breakout in the yard. But the board will have to make well, according to what Claire told me, the board needs to order that this be started and in place by a certain date. And you can be discretionary, and they recommend that you, if the date suggested is, say, June 15th, the board could order it to be completed by July 15th, something like that, just for some review of it.
Right,
Okay.
so this redesign was precipitated by a failure of the original system. There was breakout to the ground. So we redesigned a new system to try to get some more leaching area in there. After the approval, the homeowner did, we kind of redesigned the way the system is operated. Originally, it was a pump dose system where it pumps from the pump chamber up to the D box based on demand, based on the water use in the house. That was revised to a time dosing, so we could spread out the water use in the house over a 24-hour period, rather than giving a big slug of water up to the leach field all at once. We spread that out over 24 hours. And there was also a monitoring system installed in each of the chambers to monitor the effluent level in each one of the trenches to see how that time dosing affected it. And it really improved the situation. It stopped the breakout almost immediately because we were able to spread that flow out. But we've been monitoring it now for just about 18 months. And the leaching trenches still don't completely dry up. There's still some static level in each one of those trenches. So they do need to be replaced. They're just not leaching the way they should. But we did stop the immediate environmental concern of breakout. So they have hired a contractor. They are going to use Scott Septic to replace the leach field. We talked to Scott's. They're looking to start the construction sometime in June. They're not sure exactly whether that's going to be early June or late June. So we'd appreciate if we could have an end date of like August 1st, just to give them a little wiggle room around around the construction schedule.
And just to make sure that I understand it correctly, so 2 years ago, a new system was approved, but you've used the time in between to analyze better, like what the dynamics are that are going on in terms of effluent generation and then how the land and the system is receiving it. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And so that's used up time to figure out what's happening out there.
Yeah, it kind of gave us better data on to confirm that our new design is actually a better design than the old design. So it was helpful to get that data.
Okay. Right, it does. Besides, I mean, it's good that the breakout was stopped, but I am eager to see it change so that the system is not always wet, because that drying out phase is really important for bacteria and virus destruction. So if that can be affected by this change, then that would be good, in my opinion.
I agree.
Does anyone else have comments or questions?
If I can just add, Daryl, if August 15th is the date, just in case anything could go wrong, I'd suggest September 15th be the deadline, and ordered by the board that it be installed by September 15th, just to give them that 30-day leeway.
I want to do that, but I also just want to say, like, it's been 2 years, and so like that really needs to be a priority and sort of be prioritized in their kind of interactions. And so, you know, what I might suggest is like August 1st and September 1st, because again, if it's wet and not performing adequately, like there should be some sense of urgency to getting this rectified. But again, I think the intent is to get it done, not to be punitive in this, but really just to say like this really needs to get taken care of. And I wouldn't expect the board to be enthusiastic about extending past that deadline.
Right, because it's already an extension. I appreciate the study of it, and I don't know if the homeowners have identified any practices they had, such as, I'm just going to throw this out, I'm not saying it's what it is, but such as dumping a lot of oil down the drain or something like that, or I don't know what else there would be, but.
And so
It's hard to say. We think it was excess water use. We are monitoring the water use now, and it seems to be in line with the design criteria now, but we really didn't know what it was before, because it's hard to determine how much water they're using when you're on a well accurately anyways.
Yeah.
And so I just want to be sensitive to time, because I know we have the 8:50, but would love to get this closed out. Mark, it sounds like you need a vote from us to assign the date.
That is correct, Matt, as well as this plan needs to be renewed as well. So there'll be a vote to renew the plan, as well as there will be a need for a vote to renew the plan, as well as a vote to set an order to certain date that it be installed by. And I'm using the word order only because that's the word that I was told by DEP should be used, that you order them to have it installed by a certain date.
So Dan, you suggested August 15th, right, as the date?
Well, I think I actually said August 1st.
First, okay.
To give us some window, but if we could have an August 1st start date and completion date by September 1st as the outside, I think everybody would appreciate that.
Okay. All right, any other comments from anyone? So, Mark, are you suggesting first we approve the renewal of the
Yes,
plan?
yes.
All right, and Ellen, was there anything administratively that needs to be done prior to renewal of a plan?
No, they've done it. They've submitted everything.
Okay, all right. So do we have a motion to approve the renewal of this septic plan?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other comments? Okay, Matt?
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye. Can
Matt
you hear me?
Vitale, aye.
Yes, we can, Rebecca.
Okay, good,
And
great.
And Daryl, aye. All right, and then do we have a motion to set a start date of no later than August 1st for the replacement and a completion date of no later than September 1st?
So moved.
Seconded.
Other comments? Okay, Matt?
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Matt Vitale, aye.
And Daryl, aye. And is there anything else that's needed tonight, Mark, from us?
Oh, and I appreciate you taking this while Dan was still with us. We're all set with this one. Thank you.
As
Thank
do I. Thank you very much.
All right, good night. Okay, now we have a variance hearing for 100 Maple Street for a septic replacement. And do we have all the green cards, Ellen?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So let me bring up the
Engineers here, I believe, as well, Daryl, Jason Youngquist.
okay.
Yes, Jason Youngquist, Outback Engineering.
All right, so here's the locus map. And Jason, I can't recall if you've presented with us before, but if not.
Yes, we were here a couple weeks ago with this plan, and we got approved 2 variances, one from section 10.2.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Setback from the property line, and then from section 10.2 as well, the setback to the wetlands. And Mark had pointed out that we also needed a setback from section 8.0 subsection 2 to allow a septic system where the maximum groundwater level is less than 5 feet below natural surface grade. Here it's 54 inches below grade. That's where models were encountered on one of the test holes. Since that last meeting, we've added this waiver, this 3rd waiver request to the plan. We've also made some additional revisions per Mark's comments. And other than that, it's pretty much the same plan.
Okay. So yes, I think you had requested a waiver to section 8.01, correct? And then 2 is sort of the companion piece. Is that right? Last time?
Last time it was from sections 10.2, two waivers from 10.2. So this 8.0 subsection 2 is a new waiver.
That
So
is correct.
we had to re-notify abutters and make sure that waiver was properly requested.
Okay. Any questions from anyone on this? Mark, do you have a comment?
Yes, Daryl. So on this plan, they are designing 4.5 feet to the, well, that's where groundwater was found. So that's why the 8.02, and that was estimated seasonally adjusted groundwater and determined by models, actually, because we did it both ways. So that's why they needed this additional waiver, because within that range was where the groundwater was found by the determination from models.
Okay.
If I can add, Daryl, just at hangar 8.01, They have the septic system designed to be 5.05 feet from groundwater, so that's why they don't need 8.01.
Yeah, it's rare that we don't see them together. So
Mhm.
I was
How
thinking
true,
that's how it got missed, but okay,
how true.
all right. Okay, then do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 8.02 of our regulations?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other comments? Okay, Matt,
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye.
and Daryl, I. So we'll close the hearing, and are the plans ready for approval?
Yes, Darryl, I'm sorry, I was trying to get to the microphone there. The plans are ready for approval, conditional to a deed recording for the garbage grinder that's not being designed.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the plan subject to receipt of that deed recording?
So moved.
Seconded.
Other comments? Okay, Matt,
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye.
and Daryl, I. All right, well, thank you for bringing that back to us.
Absolutely. Thank you very
And-
much.
Have a good night.
Have any questions? Just
So-
let Mark know.
Yeah, and
Yep.
Jason, the next step now is to have the owner get us that. Ellen will send you a deed recording.
Yep.
And then it's up to the owner to get it registered at the Registry of Deeds. A lawyer could do it, or they can bring it into Cambridge. And then from there, once that's received back to our office with the evidence it's been received and documented at the registry, then we'll release the plan. Then the only other necessity is to have a pre-construction with the installer and yourself and myself. And after that's done, they can start the installation. Once the installation starts, we can approve their building request up to Rough Electrical.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You guys have a good evening.
You too. Okay, Mark, you have quite a number of items here, and I don't know if there are any people in attendance for these issues, so I'm going to let you.
Yeah, I'm not for sure. I'm looking at the list right now, and I'm really not for sure. I know there'll be some discussion on both 39 Nason Hill Road and 31 South Main. I'm sorry, not 31 South Main, but 39 Nason Hill and 137 Western Ave. I don't know if, and I believe 59-3. I don't know who showed up first, but if you want, we could go in the order they're listed, with 1 being 59 North Main, 2 being 137 Western Ave, and 3 being 39 Nason Hill Road, but I'm not for sure who's here to.
Let's just go with that order, just because we got plenty of business to do. And
Okay. So for 59-3 North Main Street, we have a resubmitted plan, and you'll see they decided to put the cedar closet in the area of the bathroom that was originally had a full bathroom there. And they didn't change anything else, but I think the main concern the board had was making sure there wasn't a full bathroom in the basement. And the rest of it speaks for itself. We already talked about the little nook in there that has cabinets and freezers, according to the, I don't know if the owner's here, but it was going to be for storage.
I am here.
Oh, good. So thank you. I'm glad you are. So, as discussed previously, that's going to just be used for food storage, not for a kitchen.
That's correct.
Thank
That's
you.
correct. It's just plastic shelving to hold what we call the doomsday pantry.
Okay. So now I'll leave it up to the board if they have any questions. I'm glad you pointed yourself out. I didn't recognize you. So
Yeah,
being here, thank you.
For some reason, Mark, I don't know why it keeps coming up with the builder's name associated with the project.
Okay.
That's my friend Vin Gately, and he no longer owns the unit. My wife Nancy and I do.
Okay, great. Thank you for that explanation. So the
Perfect.
reason I brought it back to the board is you were reviewing this one. If you're reviewing one, it always comes back to you with any requested changes. And I believe that was the requested, one of the main requested change.
That was
Yeah,
my
it's-
understanding.
And Mark, so this seems like this is then consistent with the other deed recorded basement rooms in the same project. Is that accurate?
I'm not for sure if they're,
My
they're all-
recollection was the specifics were very much tied to if it counts as a bedroom is where we have the issue. If it
Correct.
doesn't count as a bedroom, then in other instances, the sort of deed recording has been sufficient for, I think, other units in the development. And so
that's
for
correct,
me,
Matt. Yeah.
that doesn't look like a bedroom. I think reasonable to proceed from my standpoint. Does anybody feel any differently on the board?
No, I think it certainly removes the full bath. In the ideal world, I would love to see this door being off of the hallway or off of the other room so that it's not a big temptation to put a tub or shower in there, but it does meet our requirements at the moment.
Perfect. Mark, do you need anything else from us to close this one out?
No, from what I can see, nothing else is needed. I know this is a active building application. I could approve it. And I do understand what you meant by the deed recording. All these units are recorded as having a deed restriction to 2 bedrooms. So yes, all these units have deed recordings to the amount of bedrooms allowed.
Right, and the
Thanks, Mark.
ZBA has said if we didn't find it to be a bedroom, then it would it would match up with their limitation on 2 bedrooms. So, Ellen, I forget, do we vote for this to give Mark clear guidance or not necessary?
I think a concurrence or a vote would be sufficient. A vote would be the
Either
best
way.
way to go about it.
Yeah, okay. All right, so do we have a motion to authorize Mark to approve these plans as submitted with the half bath now in the basement?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other comments? Okay, Matt?
Matt Beavers, aye.
Sorry, Lisa, I.
I'm going to abstain. I need to think about it. Thanks.
Matt Vitale, aye.
And Daryl, aye. Okay,
All right, Gene, have a good night and enjoy the pantry.
Thank you, appreciate it.
we'll know where to come on Doomsday.
We have plenty of Richardson's frozen yogurt.
Ooh, even before Doomsday. All right,
Indeed. Thank you so much.
okay, good night.
Good night.
Mark, I've already forgotten which one you said. was
137
before.
Western, I think, is
Yes,
next.
that's
Excellent.
correct. Yeah. And
All right.
that's, I don't know if the homeowner or the builder's here, but they were invited to be here.
I'm here, Mark. Sean Cutting from.
Oh,
Cutting
hi,
Edge.
Sean. Yeah, there's the builder. So just so the board knows, this was a house with a 6-bedroom septic system. It was a replacement septic system put in good 15 years ago, I believe. And we had to determine, it was modified, but it is indeed a 6-bedroom septic system for a 6-bedroom house. Right now, they have 12 rooms in the house, 6 upstairs, 6 on the first floor, and they would like to put in 2 additional rooms in the basement. The 2 additional rooms would cause the room count to go over the maximum amount of rooms allowed. So in this case, they would be allowed up to 13 rooms, but not 14. So they're asking if they can have one of those basement rooms recorded as not being part of the bedroom count when they, as we've done in other cases with the deed recording.
As I think the best way to look at these plans is A 2.1 is showing what the basement plan that we intend, which is 450. Just
Right
went
there, Dan.
2.1. Yep, yep. Back
A
one more.
1.2, what are you?
Sorry, sorry, this one you can use too, the 2.0 here that we're on.
Okay.
So in the basement, we're proposing a 450 square foot basement expansion to an existing basement that's there now. There is no walkout. All the foundation is, on flat land. There's no exposed foundation height that I'm aware of over 18 inches. We're proposing just kind of a basement playroom, theater room, and in a gym. No plumbing or bathrooms down there.
Okay, and Mark, so I was confused. There seemed to be alternate plans for, say, the second floor of the property. So, but everything else is finished and now only the basement is being addressed. So I guess I'd just like confirmation of which of the second floor plans
They
applies.
are doing some modifications, Daryl. They originally wanted to put a third floor room in, but they know they can't do that based on the present situation, the configuration of rooms. They could only have 6 rooms above the first floor, but they are modifying, and Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, some bathrooms on the second floor.
Yeah, just because of the length of time that some of this stuff is taken, the client is only looking for permission for the 2 basement rooms at this time.
Okay.
All right, so that's all that we're focusing on at the moment, as opposed to the other alternatives with different hallway configurations and exercise rooms and.
Correct.
All right. Okay, and Mark, so you've counted all the other rooms carefully, and it's at
Yes,
12 now. All right,
that's correct. Yes.
all right. So given the lack of outside egress, this would be consistent, in my opinion, with some deed restrictions that we've granted in the past to rooms that would not be suitable as bedrooms and don't have any features that really argue for it. Certainly no windows and no egress, outside egress would make it unsafe as a bedroom. Anybody else have comments?
No, it feels very consistent with how we've handled the other basement plans.
So I can't recall, we've basically allowed a deed recording to reduce the total room count effectively, not just the bedroom count.
Yeah,
Yeah, total room count.
but just
If it
for
was set up
basement
as a bedroom, we would not.
Right, but we can reduce the total room count. Sounds good.
We do have
and this is similar to what we've done in the past for the Bullard Street campus project, if I remember right.
Yes.
That's correct. Yeah, we have a boilerplate type deed recording that, Sean, you may want to obtain from Ellen, our administrative director, tomorrow, but we would need to have that recorded before the building permit could be approved.
Okay.
If the board so wishes to approve this request.
Okay, so
I just want to make a comment that I think that it's really, it's such a slippery slope, and I think it's really difficult, and I totally support the intent and everything, but I just think we need to be careful about this sort of thing. And this is the beginning of what we started, and now it's quite often that we're doing this. So I don't know, just saying that, throwing it out for consideration.
I think if it's a slippery slope, we've already, I don't think we can say we've done this on a number of other projects and now this is the one we're not going to do it on. So I don't disagree that the precedent kind of carries forward, but are you, Rebecca, are you suggesting there's something different about this project than the ones that the board has previously approved? Or is it a general concern with deed recording affecting room count?
Oh, it's just a general concern about the use of a deed recording, which, because for a lot of these issues. So yes, for the general approach to room count, I think it's really tricky.
Yeah, and so at least in my 5 years on the board, this has been established as something that's been there. For context, Ellen, do you have a sense, like this doesn't feel like a new thing that's been done or introduced, is that accurate?
Correct.
So this is sort of a many-year precedent about handling in this way. So Rebecca, I think I definitely hear your concern, but it sounds like what we're doing is consistent with, at the very least, 5+ years of precedent and practice, and probably
Yeah.
longer than that.
But I was on the board for a term before you joined and we didn't do it then. So it's new in my second and third term on the Board of Health. So that's
It's
all. I'm
actually
saying.
not.
But it
I don't
might
think
just be a
that's accurate,
sampling
Rebecca.
error. No, it just could be a sampling error.
Okay.
I mean, I think what's important is, have we found any violations? So if it's a procedure that's working and is preventing modification to bedrooms, and other regulated things that would, I guess, sort of negate the room count as as understood, then I think that's an issue of concern. But I guess the question is this working? And I don't know how we can confirm that. Does anyone know?
Well, I think I think part of it, if it's working, but even if you said there was a violation, if the applicant said, you've approved 15 other instances of it, number 12 deviated, that's not a sufficient basis for me not to be able to do the same thing. What's the standard you're applying? I don't know that we have a standard specific to this project that you'd say, this is why it doesn't pass the sniff test. So I agree with you, Lisa. My impression is that it's working, but also that even a single instance of not working probably wouldn't negate the general pattern of approval, though, again, it may warrant further attention or consideration.
Right. The only way I see things not working, well, not the only way, an example of a way that things would not be working is if later earth is dug out next to one of these walls for the home theater, for example, and a bathroom is added and it becomes an au pair suite because now it has windows and light and bathroom access, and then it's something very different than what we're looking at here. But when this concept, I believe, of setting up the variances for basement rooms was devised, it was to look at rooms that would not be used as bedrooms, that were very, very unlikely and should not be used as bedrooms. And so if we keep to those criteria, yes, there will be more instances of it being applied, but they're hopefully all staying within the same set of rules, essentially.
So I suspect we're not sort of close to consensus on this, and just recognizing we've still got a lot of business. Is there sort of any other discussion we need to have, or can we kind of proceed?
I think I'm ready to proceed, and I would ask for a motion to authorize Mark to approve the plans for the basement only. I want to make that very clear because I do have a bunch of questions depending on what happens upstairs, but that he approves the plans conditional to receipt of the deed recording with the appropriate language regarding room count in the basement that Ellen has. So
Yeah, can I just ask, would both basement rooms be deed recorded or just one of them?
I think just one, because that's all that's needed.
Okay.
Unless someone else feels.
No, I would agree with one. I don't think the goal here is to sort of be like, no, you've got more room. Like, it's really to say, these sort of don't function in that way. I'd prefer to deed record the minimum necessary to achieve the discussion. If the applicant wants to revisit in the future with different plans, certainly happy to do that. But I'm not inclined to sort of do more than is necessary for the data that's been provided.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Has this been moved and seconded? I don't think so.
I don't think so. I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, vote.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
I'll abstain again.
Matt Vitale, aye.
And Daryl, I. Okay. Any other questions for the moment? And so
So
Sean, would
Sean-
it be
Yep. Go ahead.
you relaying the deed recording language to the owners, or?
Yeah, I'll connect with Mark and Ellen and we'll make sure that we get the boilerplate deed restriction and we can work that through to Cambridge and then get it onto Chris at the building department and we'll go from there.
Okay.
And I'll try to send the language out either tomorrow or Friday.
Great. Thank you, Ellen. I appreciate it. I appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you, Sean. Take care.
Have a good night. I think we're 39 Nason next, at least when I looked at it.
Hi, we're the property owners, David and Phoebe McLaren.
Thank you. Thank you for announcing yourself as well. I appreciate it.
I'm Paul, the contractor, Paul Blitzer.
Okay, thank you, Paul. And owners. So Daryl, you see what happened here, first of all, is just to let you know, the building commissioner was called on for a kitchen addition, I think, or modification. And in doing so, and it's unfortunate, but there was some foundation issues. And so with that noted, I guess now they need to demolish that whole as noted right here, as noted on the plans. So the demolition was allowed because there was no increase in design flow with that. But I believe it's prior to these homeowners that purchased this house, they had set up a room over the garage as a playroom den. And I don't have any knowledge of any documents to show that room, but that would have been a 6th bedroom if it's accessible through the 2nd floor. And so there was some consideration on the possibility of making this a room accessible through another means, but they would like to call it a bonus. I'm glad you went to this plan, but as I explained to the building commissioner, and I believe he's relaying everything to the builder, that would be access right through the 2nd floor, which would make that the 6th bedroom. This is a 5-bedroom septic system. And so I explained that I couldn't allow that, but I would be glad to bring it to the Board of Health for review. So that's why it's with the board tonight. And again, my concern would be access through the 2nd floor would make that another room above the 1st floor. With the
Right,
bedrooms.
and not just that, but I think this also becomes an additional room because it has 2 doors.
Is there also another plan? I believe there's
There's
Yep.
different concepts. I
Right.
believe here.
Yeah, and just so you guys are aware, the
Okay,
room
so I
above the
think this
garage,
one shows the 2.
well,
Okay,
that's
which
it.
one would you like to?
This
go
one here
into
is the one we're talking about.
Mhm.
I believe. I can't. That's the 2nd proposal. If you go down one more. That was the 3rd proposal. There's 3 different proposals that we were trying to see when we talked to the building inspector to go through. Everything's the exact same. We're actually taking 1 bathroom out that was on the 2nd floor. So we're not changing anything at all. We're just rebuilding what's there. And this,
our goal is just to put the house back in order.
Yeah.
In its current state.
They have the septic system, I believe, was put in 2018 or 2019. So all this was looked over during that time. Nothing has changed except that we found out that the house doesn't have a foundation.
But so again, it may have been that we had a proposal, but it feels very unlikely that we'd say, because one of our rules is a room above the 2nd floor, or a room on the 2nd floor above is a bedroom. I can't imagine any scenario where the board wouldn't have counted finished space that's accessible from the 2nd floor that way. So what I don't know is what the points of access were, or whether that was included in the plans that were submitted for that. But I would say that sort of independent of that, we can't just not follow the rule. The
Mhm.
scenarios where we've been able to do it have typically been when the access is through some other area so that it's on the second floor, but it's not accessible through the kind of access ways to the main house. So for example, like a craft room above a garage accessible via stairwell in the garage. That's a scenario I can recall us doing, but I can't remember having one where we said, no, it's not a bedroom, even though it's a room on the second floor. And so, Mark, do you know when the plans were approved and what was submitted at that time?
That I do not know.
And
Because
Matt,
we would
I can
never-
share a photo of that room from the original sale in 2018. The room's been there for 20, 30 years.
That's
right,
what I thought.
but it's like when we do a septic plan, we don't necessarily go into the house and say, I'm counting this bedroom or I'm looking at
Okay.
it. So it's certainly possible it's been non-compliant for decades. But then we sort of have to say, particularly as it's now being rebuilt, how do we handle that? And sort of how do we do that consistently? So I think one piece of background that would probably be helpful is to look at the septic application, Mark, from 2018 to just figure out if it was reflected. And I don't think if the floor plan is described as consistent, it's harder for me to say, we called it this many bedrooms when we had you put in the septic system, but now that you're sort of building or modifying it, we're changing our room count.
So Matt, may I even ask the board, since we're in an active site without a kitchen for 2 months with a 5.5-month-old, can we conditionally approve it and come back to the space above the garage at a later date to continue construction?
For me, it's just tough because again, it's saying, what is it we're approving? Because if we've got a bunch of different scenarios about, this is plan 1, this is plan 2, this is plan 3, like if we approve plan 1 and we're like, yeah, it's not compliant, then you're sort of back at scratch where that's now unfinished attic in plan 3. And so I think that part feels tricky. At the same time, I recognize we don't have our next meeting until May 4th. And so, trying to think through that, I think is probably in scope. So maybe let's bring it back to the board for kind of other reactions. And I guess the other question for you guys is, depending on, and I don't mean to sort of force the issue to say this is what you need to do, but just thinking about like what gets you to finish the fastest and what things can you then regroup and revisit. One strategy might be to say do plan 3 where it's unfinished attic at this space because it lets you finish everything else and then you can readjudicate that piece as part of a separate conversation so that you're not coupling the rest of the house to that determination. If that's feasible with your building plans and your architect and everything else, that might be one strategy where you could kind of bypass the issue acutely to move forward and let it come back to sort of chew on it some more without holding up the rest of your project. So there's some risk that we might say, no, really, it's got to be unfinished attic. So I don't want you to paint in the corner, but just to sort of put it out there as something to think about.
Paul, I
I
believe
will
we're okay with
mention that part of me wonders whether something like that, though, is what happened before. And then the space turned into a finished room, playroom. And now you're faced with coming in and, gee, how come we can't just replace it? Because something got done that was a bit outside our control. And when I see this lovely expansive window in this room, I can't imagine it staying unfinished. It just, would be a glamorous storage space.
I think she left that in there. The architect left that in there from the plan above. She was supposed to make it unfinished. I think that might have been a mistake by her.
Okay.
She was supposed to take.
And then it still begs the question of having this space here, which very much looks like a room. This hallway, what's labeled as a hallway.
It comes down. I believe we were going to put some closet space there and the stairways right there and goes into the rest of the hallway.
Yeah. What would make me feel better about that, if that's a direction ahead, is that this is, say, open banister, or it's very clearly lots of closet space that is not making this a decent sized room, easily cut off with doors.
We could definitely put, I know that Phoebe wanted more closet space. We can put a closet up there right where your arrow is right now. Or put it up for an open railing even too.
Yeah, or open railing would be more like a a lofty sort of a feel, or a large landing right at the head of the stairs.
Sure.
I think they're open up to either thing to get it to keep going. With
I mean, to just be honest, we've been pretty strict about that. People need to present us the proposal of what they're actually proposing in its final form, so that we can vote on something that, you know, is in the record as this is what was proposed and presented, discussed and voted on. So we can't look at like 3 different choices and say, well, we could change this and we can change that. We have to sort of limit it to voting on something that's tangible and presented in the final form that we can vote on.
So I think when I did the room counts too, this, if it's, as Matt pointed out, if this is only accessible by the first floor and it doesn't have a bathroom up here in this space, and it is not connected to the rest of the second floor, we do not need to count this as a bedroom. That's well-established procedure in town. So this offers a lot of possibility, but this space here, again, looks like a room. And so this does not work out because this becomes then the 7th bedroom, right? Or the 6th bedroom. I forget what the numbers are here, but this becomes a problem. And you already have a laundry room unless you made a giant laundry room, but in any case. So this plan might offer more easier opportunity, and except for this space.
Okay, is that something we can have talk to the architect and have her address that and have you look at it again? But
Daryl, if we sort of imagine, and again, to Lisa's point, I don't think it's sort of our role to kind of say, you know, you should do X, Y, and Z. I think I'm just trying to kind of, you know, sort of, I think it was David made the point of just, you know, what lets us move forward. I shared Daryl's concern that if you sort of look at hallway and you look at bedroom and you say, well, what's different? They're pretty similar, particularly if bonus room is only accessible from the ground floor. And so, you know, certainly combining those into kind of one space, so it's larger bedroom. So that instead of being 2 rooms, that's 1 room. Because I think in the first plan, that top bedroom is bedroom number 5, which I think would be compliant. And so if that were a single space, I guess my question for the board is, if we approved a plan conditional to those 2 rooms being combined in proposal 2, is that something that's close enough to a described plan that we feel comfortable approving it conditionally, or do we think it needs to come back no matter what?
I kind of think we need to see a plan.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah,
I feel bad because I know there's a bit of a gap, but I feel like that's too many changes.
Yeah, I agree. And I just feel like we've rejected previous people for the same sorts of adjustments. So I just think in terms of parity, that feels, I'm uncomfortable a little bit.
So then I think that sounds reasonable. And, you know, I think then my goal is to say, you know, let's give as clear direction as possible for these are the things that we're thinking about, to set it up as likely as possible to be able to be successful with the architect and the plans, and then, you know, get on the next meeting. And so for me, so for Daryl, for your point, if bedroom and hallway were 1 space with a single access, we're fine.
Here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Or if hallway were connected, has the hallway bedroom connection been done outside of a master suite? Like, I know we've had master suites that sort of had antechambers or other things that were connected with the bedroom. So if we closed off bedroom and you accessed it via hallway, so that was an interim to the bedroom, is that consistent with things we've done, or only for master suite?
No, I think that would be consistent. So if you're saying if that doorway, basically you could have there be 2 rooms as long as there was 1 door onto the hallway.
Right.
Because then it would still count as 1 room. Like the point is this, the bedroom hallway needs to all be 1 room with 1 point of access. But if there's a wall down the middle, that would be okay. And it's like a sitting room and a sleeping room, basically. Is that what you're saying, Matt?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think we've done that for non-primary bedrooms in the past.
Right, so this could remain the entrance. This
Mhm.
would get closed off. And
And
this
you'd
could
access
either
it.
be removed or be a 2-room bedroom.
Okay,
And
two-space
again, I think our goal isn't to say, hey, you have to do this, but just so you guys can say, they said these are the couple of things we can think about and figure out what makes sense to just give you the best shot of getting to where you need to by the next meeting.
okay.
I think doing that plus switching the access to the bonus room only from the first floor would get you to an okay place.
Okay,
Alternately, the bonus room stays unfinished.
Or if you squish together any of the other 2 bedrooms into one room, it sort of makes it so that you could treat those 2 bedrooms separately. It's just it's the number of rooms above the second floor, or the second floor above that's really a sticking point.
It's both the number of rooms, but I believe, let's say if this was a room, then the total room count, I think, also goes over if I did this,
I was gonna mention
yesterday,
that,
but
Gerald.
Yeah, so that's why if I think we have to make that not a room somehow. So it either
Yeah.
needs to join with the bedroom, or or it needs to be like open with the open banister. But then if you have the open banister and
oh,
access
but
to
there's
the
no
bonus room-
banister here.
Right,
'cause
I'm talking about the other plan.
Oh,
So
yeah,
Did have an extra room in the count that we had done.
Yeah,
believe
you
it
can
was
only
our
have up to
we had
11.
10.
is there any way to move forward with the first floor? So we could start on, because we still have a lot of work to do on the existing, what's there to get things going. Is there any way we could agree on the first floor and have to?
do you
revisit
have a
this?
foundation in yet?
No, we
No,
don't have, we haven't.
Still,
torn down.
So
our
Mark,
house
can
is
we
still
do
intact.
foundation permit then?
Yeah, we could do a foundation permit. They could submit a plan not showing the garage if they wish, and just do the kitchen slash finish the existing house without the garage. Or the bonus room, I should say. They could have the garage. So there's various options that they can follow. And that would be one if they want to get their kitchen back in place and their garage without the room over. We'd have to see the plans, but that's a possibility by all means. Now, the problem that could happen is we don't have a Board of Health meeting until May 4th. So the board would have to suggest what you would want done here so I can follow the appropriate course of action.
So I would be in favor, again, if the foundation marks forward progress, I'd be supportive of that. Again, there's some risk to you guys that the plans could change or something could change. And so it's balancing the urgency with saying, the kind of the risk of that sits with you. But I would have no objection to moving forward with the foundation plan. And then I think we've given some sort of food for thought to circle back with the architect. And certainly in the interval, if you guys wanted to connect with Mark to understand, not necessarily, like Mark won't act on behalf of the board, but can certainly give insight about how the board has handled similar scenarios in the past. Does that sound fair, Mark?
Yes, it does.
And so hopefully that at least lets you guys get some forward movement while we update the plans and can kind of go from there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'd suggest you submit a new building application to within the system, and then that will populate and be sent to me as well. So that I'd suggest that for the foundation.
I will take care of that.
Okay, and
And
if
again,
there's,
the other thing I would just say, guys, is I can't imagine how hard this is, and I'm sorry it's so hard. And I hope at the end it is much better. But I can't. I mean, I can see in your face how hard it is right now. But I just want to explicitly acknowledge that because it's really easy for this to be very abstract and kind of rule-based, and it can sometimes feel like, God, this is miserable. I wish they really got it, and I want to make sure I don't know that we get it from living it, but we're sorry it's hard.
No,
Thank you.
we appreciate it. Just trying to get our house back, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
okay. Are we up to 53, Mark?
Yes, we are, Darryl. Yeah.
I am not, again, it's almost 10, and so I'm not sure I missed it. We voted on, or we gave Mark whatever he needed for a vote.
I believe foundation only.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, sorry to interrupt, Carol.
Okay, Mark, is anyone else here? Or are you explaining this? for us?
I'm not for sure if anyone else is here, but GLM designed the plan. Is anyone here? I don't see anyone here from GLM that I'm not for sure. I should ask, is anyone here from GLM? If not, this is a septic tank replacement. They're planning to keep the distribution box as is. It's a direct replacement as we saw for the other one. It's a monolithic tank, 2-compartment, and it's ready for approval. I believe this house may be on the market, but that wouldn't matter, you know, but they have found that this tank needs replacing.
You know, I have to confess, I can't recall so many tank replacements.
I was
I
gonna say
agree.
the same thing.
I know, I'm not for sure what's happening out there, but
It kind of makes me wonder if there was something faulty about some set of tanks that came out at one time.
could have been. I know they've require more standards now with the type of concrete and other type of requirements for structures like septic tanks and distribution boxes.
Acid rain, man.
Yeah, it's got to be, and the acidity and the
Yeah.
actual septic waste as well. But yeah, no, it's the acidity does tear the concrete apart. That is correct.
Okay, so are you recommending approval?
Yes, I am, Darryl.
Right? Does anyone have any questions? Seems fairly straightforward to me.
I agree.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the plans as submitted?
So moved.
Seconded.
And Mark, any conditions that need to be on this?
No conditions, no.
Okay. So any other?
Well, pre-construction for installation. I mean, but that we do all the time.
Yeah, okay. Any other comments? Okay, Matt?
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Matt Vitale, aye.
And Daryl, aye. Okay. So Mark, do we have any more? Yes.
Yeah, we have 2 other plans.
156. Oh, Elaine is
GLM.
here,
Yeah.
so we should probably do that.
Yeah, I thought they would be here, but GLM.
No,
is
I
not
see
up.
Elaine is on.
I'm here. I just want to hear approved.
Oh, good. I'm glad you can represent your engineer too.
Oh, there you go.
But Daryl, if you want, we can do one at a time. That's up to you. This is that 2-lot subdivision that was created from the original house at, I believe, 160 Mason Hill. And so they're planning to, they have been approved, but they wanted to upgrade the septic system's plot plan to show the actual foundation, the proposed house. So with that said, which one do you have there? Lot 1 or lot 2, Darryl?
I have lot 2 up first.
Lot 2, okay, that's the one I have in hand here. So this one's all set. It's for a 5-bedroom septic system without a garbage grinder, but the deed recording for the garbage grinder has already been completed. And like I say, they had to do some small changes since the foundation is now determined. And so with that, I would recommend approval of the plan. And this is the one, let me just see. All these other, yeah, this is the one that doesn't have the existing well, but I recommend approval of the water. The well has already been approved as well. So this is just for the septic alteration. And there's the well, that's correct. Yeah.
All right, do we have a motion to approve the plan as presented?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other comments? Okay, Matt?
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Matt Vitale, aye.
And Daryl, I. Okay, and now for the next one.
Yeah, that's 160 Mason Hill Road, Lot 1. And this is the one that has the existing well and the existing house. If you look closely, you can see the shade of the existing house there inside the newly designed foundation footprint. And
Oh,
this one does have
yes.
an existing well that needs to be abandoned. That was noted in the previous approval, but I will note it again in this approval that the existing well does need to be abandoned. It's on the bottom center, a little bit right below the house, Daryl. There's a note that says existing well.
Oh, yeah.
be
Okay.
abandoned. And so I'm recommending approval of this as well. The deed recording for the garbage grinder has already been put in place. I just wanted to note that it's the same recommendation from the previous approval that the well has to be abandoned. And for both lots, the new wells have to be drilled and water potability proven before the building application can be approved. But outside of that, I'm recommending approval of
Okay.
this septic alteration.
And when does the well need to be abandoned? Prior to what?
It would be part of the new well being drilled.
Okay.
You can't have two wells in the same property.
Okay. Do we need to call that out in the motion or?
I think that would be appropriate. I do.
Okay. Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the plan as presented, conditional to abandonment of the existing well prior to new well installation?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other comments? Okay, Matt?
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Matt Vitale, aye.
And Daryl, I. Okay. Anything else
Thank
for this?
you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Hopefully you won't see us again.
Have a good night.
You too. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Did we hit everything, Mark?
I think we need to do the.
I believe you have.
The
Yes, you
disposal
have.
works installer permit.
Yes.
Yeah,
down
no,
below.
I meant agent's business. Are
Oh,
we?
yeah.
I think we have.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see, Vegas Builders, are they new
Yeah.
for us?
They are new. They were hired by the owner of 41 Perry Street to do the soil testing, and they're also the contractor that is planning to do the installation for 41 Perry Street. So they're getting to the point where they're very close to the installation part of it. This was a building application again that I think went astray. They started doing work without proper permits, so they have to start the construction of the system, and then they'll get approval for the building application up to rough electrical. But back to the disposal works installer, I worked with him once in another town, and I don't have any issues, and he's had one other recommendation. So as always, the engineer and I will work closely with them because the rules and regulations may be a little bit different to what he may be familiar with. He's from the Neshoba regional area, but again, I've worked with him before and he does follow instructions. So I'd recommend approval of his installer's permit with a pre-construction conference.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve this permit conditional to pre-construction meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Anything else? Okay, Matt?
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Matt Vitale, aye.
And Daryl, I. Okay, so see that there's going to be training sessions again from MAHB. And right now, I think Ellen just needs to know who is inclined to want to attend.
Right, because when they do open the registration, in order to avoid any problem with if you go there and you haven't paid, they haven't received payment, it can be just a little more difficult.
I'm interested.
Okay, and I'll note if people are signing up, we do pay, you know, whether you show up or not. So,
So Rebecca, which one would you go to? Do you know?
Would you mind telling me the dates again? I have a
it's
calendar
on
in
the
front of me.
screen.
On the screen.
I'll make it bigger.
Thanks. I'm just on the phone still, so it's very small. Yeah. Okay. So can I call? Why don't I look at the calendar and call you tomorrow, Ellen?
Okay.
So I don't hold everybody up. May 14th.
And those are all Saturdays, correct, Ellen?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure
I
that.
just checked that they are.
So I can't do May 14th. I might pick the 11th in Holyoke.
Yeah, I'll be on the Cape by then. Enjoy.
Taunton's right near the Cape.
I got stuff going on. I'm busy.
Right, so it sounds like people can let Ellen know the date if you're interested in attending.
Yeah, I think why don't you put me down for the one in Marlborough? Just because it's closer, and then if anything changes, I'll let you know.
Okay. All right. So Ellen, you'll be hearing from folks. What's the day that you would ideally like?
Well,
the
I
replies
don't.
by?
Oh, well, whenever they send the actual registration. So I don't know what the actual date is.
Yeah. Okay. So sooner the better. Let's see, we did preliminary discussion regarding review of Board of Health regulations. So we have some administrative edits that have been drafted by town council for codifying some of the procedures, well-established procedures, but still turning them into part of our regulations. So there's one set of edits for that. And I've started making some edits for other bits and pieces of our regulations, including more guidance around well installation and disinfection. And so another administrative tweak that we had left over for the ledge disruption section of our regulations that we missed. And a few other things. There's that, and then there may be other changes that people want to see. So this is more to.
If I can, Darrell, I know you noted when we were reviewing 183 South Main Street about cesspools with additional lines off them, or well, they don't call them that in Title V. They call them conventional systems because they have a leaching line off an old cesspool. But I'm hoping that can be addressed too, because they should be treated no differently than a cesspool.
Yeah.
So Darrell, I sort of wonder if it makes sense to kind of use our time tonight to think a little bit about scoping and then sort of how to divide labor up to kind of work on that collectively and sort of what the pathway will bring.
Yeah,
so
that's sort of where I was heading, whether, you know, what are the topics that we want to address that we know of, and who wants to work on what. For example, there's still the form and other guidance for the ledge disruption management plan that we have that requirement.
Darrell, would it work for me to share a screen and I can just kind of take notes so folks can see it?
Yep, hold on.
And Darrell, oh, sorry.
And so Darrell, I can then just add as we kind of go along, and then folks can say if I'm sort of on track or off track in terms of the topics, and then maybe we can just lay out kind of who's interested in what topic. Does that sound okay?
Yep.
Okay, so what were you saying about wells, Darrell?
I've made a number of rough edits for wells, primarily around flushing and disinfection. And either for being done by licensed professionals or other people approved, but that's generally the gist for the wells.
Yeah, so kind of well flushing and disinfection, that's one topic.
Also, there are administrative changes made by, ledge and the form for the ledge.
And note, is there going to be a discussion of notification?
I mean, we can sort of have whatever. I think the gap that we've identified is that it says the application form, and there's not a formal application form that, we've asked people to submit an application, but to kind of help prepare the documentation that we want the applicant to provide in a sort of systematic way.
Can I put under that category, under the ledge disruption and the form creation, another category, which would be system of notification, which is the way, like Cape Cod, which has some similarities to Sherborn with the wetlands, and that's how they've addressed a lot of the issues having to do with Otis Air Force Base and private wells, is by just having a system of notification. And that way they can basically say, well, we informed you and you were informed. And that way people are.
Well, I mean,
so I think that's a way that.
I think for now, why don't we just brainstorm a list and not get into details?
Yeah, and also and Otis is.
I was just explaining what I meant by, sorry.
Yeah.
No, I get it. I just don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole given the hour.
That's fine, sorry.
Yep.
So administrative changes, and so Daryl, what I might ask is, I think some of those may end up falling into some of the other categories. And so I'd love to kind of do the 30,000 foot view kind of as Matt described, and then we can figure out if some of those have administrative. Does that sound okay?
Yep.
So I think EHIR sort of punctuation, because I think many of us were on the board when we revised it, and I think have an interpretation that we think is consistent, but updating punctuation to remove any confusion that a third party may have, having not worked on the regulation.
Yes. And I've actually already made that change as well, but there might be more to do. At least a tentative version, I'll say.
So I'm going to keep EHIR just for the 30,000 foot view.
Yep.
I think open space subdivision, the thing that my recollection is that within it, it describes that, for an open space subdivision that may have setbacks, it's different for the rest of the board, but we don't specify those setbacks. I think the other question I have is, open space subdivision, I think our interest in particular was because you could have point size contamination that was a pattern of spread that was different than for, say, a typical single family home. And so I don't know if we want to limit it to something that is an open space subdivision in terms of its planning board structure versus a sort of broader consideration about, sort of clustered septic system, whether that's in the confines of a open space subdivision or some other structure.
Well, all right, without getting deep in the weeds, I'd say that I could envision a change that could be made at the planning board level that would simplify what we would have to do and not have to construct something that could account for all sorts of conditions. But depending on timing, we might have to do the latter, the more complicated one.
Okay. And then I think the other one that had come up that I don't think is in scope for the Board of Health. Oh, good. Jeff's still on here, so I can help have him on the hook. The sort of anti-segmentation discussion and regulations that are present in some towns, I think, are probably appropriate and prudent. I don't think they're a Board of Health regulation. And I would imagine that they're a planning board regulation, but I don't know if they're that versus a bylaw, but, sort of town bylaw.
And I broached that subject, yes, with I've collected information on segmentation language and yeah, broached it with others. So
do we think open space up?
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I wanted to ask a process question, but I can wait till you're done.
So I guess my question is, we think about the open space, it sort of feels like one of our topics might be kind of partnership and collaboration with the planning board, that some of these kind of could come up, but things like ledge disruption or well management isn't them. But it sounds like the two big topics are kind of thinking about segmentation and thinking about open space subdivision. You know, Daryl, as we sort of talked about that, do you feel like the open space subdivision is a subset of a kind of planning board collaborative effort? Or would you favor at least starting out thinking about it within the Board of Health and going from there?
I actually think that partly the administrative changes and the punctuation for the EHIR could capture the open space subdivision issue that we bumped into, as could the bigger change I was mentioning about like lot configuration. For example, there are towns that don't allow rat tails in lot configuration, and the segmentation would also help with that. So that one, I don't think neatly right now, open space subdivision fits in our part 3 of the regulations.
Yeah.
It's already covered. It's not a single family home on a single lot. So that's why I question how specific we have to get to open
I guess
space.
it sounds to me like there are some things that maybe fall under, there are some things that are probably larger issues that we need to engage the planning board on, but some of these might also fall under how we revise the AHR language.
Yes.
Because you could see anti-segmentation falling under there. You could see some of the open space subdivision sort of not necessarily called out under there, but sort of falling under there.
And then one thing, Daryl, I know that we talked about years ago and we haven't addressed it yet is sort of drinking water potability standards, like what, you know, we had discussed that we might want to just reference Massachusetts MMCLs and, you know, basically hold people to the same sort of standards. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And then the other one is just in recognizing that there's some possibility that Ellen and Mark won't remain working on behalf of the citizens of the town of Sherborn indefinitely. You know, sort of formalizing the criteria for a completed application. I think this may fall kind of under kind of like the punctuation level, where I think we've gotten some guidance about town council about how one could approach that. And so I think some of this work is already done. So I want to sign up for this one because I think it'll be one of the easy ones. But what I'd suggest in general is I think that especially having dealt with COVID for the last couple of years, you know, we've sort of had a lot of time and attention on that. And I think there's definitely some topics that I think have kind of bubbled up, and it would be lovely to kind of say, you know, I don't think we'll be able to do everything because I think it's impossible, but at least identifying a subset of things that we could do and identifying 2 members of the board who could sort of do some of that pre-work to then have a sounding board to work on it with, and then ultimately bring it back to the full board. So whatever we sort of land on, I might suggest we try to have 2 people who are kind of collaborating on that topic. Is that?
Yes, and you could put that, formalizing that up underneath administrative changes, because that is a large part of what town council tried to address.
Perfect.
I'm actually, this is one of the things that I want to ask under the procedural part, because I'm really interested in working together with you, Daryl, on this, if you would allow me to. And I was wondering, one year I was really impressed because the planning board, not the planning board, sorry, the select board was doing something. And they had a session that was attended by a quorum, but there was no public input allowed. And it was just a working session. And I was wondering what you guys would think about doing something like that, whether it be after we have done the individual sections so that we could get together as a board and discuss the issues. I think that might... Good.
I think the goal would be to use this to develop the meat of that, so that as a full board, you're then having something that's been really prepackaged. Because again, I think, especially if we're doing a lot of topics, having it so that it's kind of far along, and we kind of, it felt like last time did a nice job where like I spent most of my time working on the issues around vaping. You know, we had, I think it was Lisa and David doing a lot of the work with Ledge and sort of thinking about some of those parts, and then kind of bringing it back to the board, having done our kind of our own homework, so that we're not collectively doing all of it, but we have kind of clear responsibility to say who's going to move this up to the point of being broadly considered.
So are you asking each of us to sign up for a section or together with another person on the board two at a time, and then come back to the board for a working session? Is that what you're suggesting?
That's what I'd have in mind. I don't know if it's the right strategy, so welcome other input, but that was sort of what I was thinking about.
Yeah, no, I think that sounds good. I mean, what do other people think?
Well, I'm going to pick the ones I've already worked on. I'll pick well installation. Although I do think
Daryl, you're
at
going to
some
end up
point
signing up.
we're all going to be reviewing and weighing in.
Yeah, we'll all be
we're-
reviewing them. Do we have to pick these now?
I think we can circulate, and maybe if you can. So Ellen, I don't think it's an open meeting violation if people communicate to you what they're interested in. Is that correct?
Yeah, that would be fine.
And so if we have topics where sort of two people are interested, you could say, hey, these are the two, and they could collaborate, and that would also not. It's sort of like if we then have some offline discussion that's like, oh, I'll do this, like 5 of us are interested in this, 2 of us will do this. That would be an open
Right.
issue. But
Right.
if you sort of said, hey, this is what everybody's interested in, I'm going to kind of work on it so that people are on too, then you could do that on behalf of the board and just communicate to those two, and it wouldn't be an issue. Is that right?
Right.
So maybe if folks are interested, let Ellen know what you're interested in, and she can kind of help pair people off. Does that sound
All
okay?
right, Ellen, put me down for the segmentation, since I've already started on that and I've already been in discussions on that. So
Would you, Daryl, I don't want to take too much time here. What is the definition of segmentation?
So I think that some of that's like sort of parsing out the projects, but again, I would say, I think let's just, so Daryl's called dibsies, but rather than all of us doing dibsies, let's just say, I think we've got plenty of work to do. And so just let Ellen know what you're interested in, and she can kind of pair people off. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, so let's not all call dibs right now. We can just send Ellen an email.
Yep. And
Okay.
I would say, if everybody can say to Ellen, this is the thing I'm most interested in, and this is the second thing I'm interested in, because I do think, at least for my life, it's really helpful to have a buddy to kind of bounce ideas off of. And kind of go from there. So it also, if life comes up, there's sort of 2 people to help move it forward. Does that sound right to people philosophically?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So we've
That's why I
got
was wondering if that is.
we've got
Can
well
Ellen-
installation, including flushing and disinfection. We've got ledge disruption, application form and creation, system notification, administrative adjustments that were developed with town council, formalizing established policy as it relates to complete application, and the HIR punctuation, drinking water potability standards. And I would say planning board engagement is kind of the squishiest topic. It includes segmentation, open space subdivision, and lot configuration. Are there other topics that folks want to have on the sort of wish list? But then if people don't sign up for them, this is plenty of work to do and get done and in a short time frame. So I just want to make sure we sort of get a chance to look at it. And then
I just want to be clear, I've started on planning board engagement and segmentation already, so. Just to be
Okay,
clear,
Daryl
in case
gets that
anyone's
one.
agonizing.
Daryl gets it, no one will challenge you.
Yeah, do you want to see, does it make any sense for anyone else to express their interest, or should we just do it by
No,
email?
people can
I thought we were
express
going
their
to do that by
interest, but
email
if
so
you
that we
were-
could stop discussing it.
Okay.
perfect. Are
I
there
agree.
are there any other regulatory topics that people have like considered? I I feel like this is good, but I don't want to.
I'm sure there are others, but I feel like if we can do these well, then that would be a major achievement.
Yeah, no, I think this is great. Thank you.
Perfect. And Ellen, I will email this very formal, very carefully crafted list to you.
I was going to ask you to do that, so thank you.
I will indeed. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then we can let Jeff talk.
I know that's never a good idea, is it? So two things I would say is that I don't know about the open space subdivision and the lot configuration, but I think consideration of shared septic systems. I'm not sure if that'll come up in those two circumstances, but if we have, say, a property where there could fit a number of houses, but they want to share a septic system between multiple dwellings, could be an interesting way to work those open space subdivisions where they're, giving up 60% of the lot for recreational and preservation purposes. So is that included in that?
Yeah.
Would you say? Because I think that could become more prevalent. And then the last thing I'd say, it's not like you guys don't have day jobs. I think we need to also consider setting consulting funds aside so that you can have expertise that you can
100%.
Yeah. Because I don't think it's realistic to not have some external experts that could do some of the legwork with your direction, and that you don't have to do the heavy lifting, and you can do more of the visioning and deciding.
The other thing is, I think there might be two waves of regulations. Some are going to be easier to do than others. And I would like to see a consultant research what other either towns or states have already come up with that we can just use and amend.
Benchmarking, I totally agree. So we, whether we have to do reserve fund transfer or whatever, you've already set your budget for this year, but I don't think, I would support whatever you want to do, but I would encourage you to consider additional resources.
So I'd almost rather see this first wave be almost, nothing's quick, but smaller tweaks.
I think it makes sense to consolidate the tweaks, but I do think, even for some of the minor things we've done, I think that the support from town council as an illustrative example has been helpful. And so again, I think even for the tweaks, having some clear support there would be helpful. And then if I do think, sort of across the board, as the regulations get added up over time, what's sort of how is a town, not specific to Board of Health, but I suspect every board has its own issues. Like, how do you sort of have the master plan of regulation to just kind of say like, oh, Board of Health updated this 2 years ago. Oh, actually that language is different between Board of Health and Planning Board or Board of Health and Concom or whatever, to sort of say who holistically looks at it to make sure that the regulations holistically integrate for the town as a whole, and what's that process of sort of oversight and review, to kind of make sure they mesh sensibly.
Could I ask you to put one more thing on your list?
Sure.
So I don't forget about it, and it relates to what Jeff was just saying. For shared systems, we need something about rules of managing those shared systems.
Right, exactly.
And there are, for big systems, the state has rules about that, how they're financed.
Like the condo association for the toilet.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So that problems don't
it's kind of a nightmare.
languish while people are fighting about who pays what share. It's to avoid those kind of delays later on. And that's certainly one where a consultant who could go out and pull out what would make sense for a small town to oversee and administer. And I don't want to work on that one.
So I feel like we've got a sort of rich set of stuff and some good next steps. And I feel like we're doing great for how busy the agenda was, but would like to kind of close this part out. Did folks have any
Okay.
other comments?
Nope. Let's see, and I wanted to mention the ARPA funds for digitization of Board of Health files. I just wanted to let you know that we put in something for that. And actually someone else, looks like DPW had put in an estimate as well. But the idea is to have scanning of the files, but it has to be done very carefully. Someone has to be able to pay attention to what the content of everything is that they're scanning and be able to label it appropriately, because a lot of the things that we have that'll be scanned are not going to be searchable files, right? A PDF reader is not necessarily going to be able to read the old hand sketches or things that were printed out crooked or fuzzy or something. So anyway, just wanted to let you know that that's there because we'd like to reduce the volume of the files, which are ever expanding and consuming a lot of space that we don't have. And it should also make access to it easier in the future. And since more of the stuff we do now is in electronic form, it'll blend right in for the future. So, all right, and I think, let's see, let's do next agenda items, and then we'll come to minutes. Anything special on next agenda?
The next meeting, there's 2 variance hearings. And then you had, something was at the beginning of the meeting to put on. Somebody remember what that was?
Oh, yes.
The well update from Daryl from talking to DEP.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And also, yeah, Mark, and we got a big email too back from DEP.
You may want to put 39 Nason Hill Lane Road rather on as a place.
Oh yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I really hope we have something to talk about with them.
Yeah.
So already there's a few things. I don't know if 21 to 23 South Main, the Dunkin' Donuts will be on, but it's a possibility. If they come in with the submittal tomorrow, I could put that on for the 4th, but starting next week, then it would go to the 18th. The meeting on the 18th.
Okay. All right, so I think the last thing we have are the minutes for approval. So these are the minutes of the 16th that because of a public records request, everyone got the email where Ellen asked for our input on edits so that she could submit those within the required time frame, which was before this meeting. And also as a way to avoid having 2 versions of allegedly finalized minutes out floating around. So we did that and those were sent out. After that, Rebecca submitted requests for edits on her section that was part of the citizens petition. So if you recall, town clerk guidance was that during that portion of the meeting, Rebecca was not participating as a board member. And we also got guidance afterwards regarding the minutes saying that therefore it's not usual for the public to edit minutes. So, and I am concerned about this. It's an unusual situation to have a board member who's presenting not as a board member. I'm concerned about what that means to take edits from someone who's not on the board officially for the topic. So I just wonder what that would change in the future, whereas there already is a mechanism, I believe, if there are some factual errors that in the past minutes have been remedied after approval by the board. So this is more of a discretionary
So
matter.
my 2 cents, Dale, is I think if town clerk said that, you know, sort of in as much as Rebecca's kind of operating as community member and not a member of the Board of Health, I actually don't want to invite community member input to edit the minutes. Like, I think it's counterproductive globally. And again, I think the minutes is supposed to be a summary and not a verbatim production, but I wouldn't be open to saying that in general, the community can say, I think the minutes should have read this or that. And I'm not aware of any board that takes a different approach. And so certainly had the topic been different and Rebecca been operating in her board capacity, that would be totally fine and appropriate. But as a general policy for the community, I don't think we can set one pattern for Rebecca as community member and a different pattern for somebody who's not a member of the board. And my own personal opinion is I think it is counterproductive and not appropriate to have kind of general committee inputs of, I think you should put it this way.
Well, actually, they're completely.
Rebecca,
May I make a statement?
no,
At
you
the end?
No, because you actually,
because you're recused
Yeah,
from
at this
Rebecca.
moment,
Like,
not
that's the whole point. Like, you're not on the board for this part of it. Like, I think we have to be the ones to discuss it.
I was just asking if I could make a statement at the end.
Okay, the other thing is the miracle of Zoom meetings is that there's a recording that exists out there that's posted and accessible through the DSC TV and YouTube websites. So there is an alternative in this case.
But for me, it's not the sort of substantive, you know, is this exactly right? Or is this close or what was intended?
Right.
It's the broader principle of, as a board, are minutes a thing that are sort of invite public input for how you think it should be phrased?
No,
And if the answer
I
to
say
that's
no.
then I think it resolves the issue outside
Yeah.
of any of the merits of those pieces. Because again, I don't intend that to be a critique of the edits that Rebecca offered, but that as a general principle, like that's not appropriate for our board.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think legally too, that's the way we have to be, because otherwise residents could be, you know, complaining like about minutes forever for all, you know, entities. So I think that's opening a door that's not required by open meeting law and frankly, I think kind of inappropriate and not a good use of resources.
Actually, if you listen to the recording, what I said.
right, but that's not our, Rebecca,
accurate.
Rebecca.
There's
We didn't invite you to
substantive-
speak. First of all, Rebecca, you're recused. We were recused. So please wait to comment and let the board finish our comments first. Thank you, Rebecca. Sorry, I don't mean to yell, but like we have to sort of do this formally.
You don't need to yell. You can just ask me nicely.
Well, you
We're on
did
board.
interrupt without
I
being
apologize
recognized.
for
I know it's
interrupting.
different than when you're just with the board.
It's no, it's when I apologize.
Okay, hold
but
on.
you can
All right,
talk
so-
nicely. You can talk nicely. It's possible.
Yes,
So,
it is.
so just for the board, so Lisa, it sounds like you're a no. Matt, it sounds like you're a no.
Yeah,
I'm a
I was
no.
going to comment.
Oh, I'm
before you
sorry.
go.
Go ahead, Matt.
It's okay. I think the only comment I wanted to make is that I agree. I think that this has nothing. I just sort of wanted to say, I think it, as to reiterate what Matt said, it doesn't have to do whether the specific comments that were made or whether they were reflected in the record. I think it does have to do with the fact that like we are ultimately responsible for our minutes, and those minutes are not meant to be a verbatim record. And so therefore, I think inviting sort of public comment always is sort of an endless problem that we could face.
Right.
And I think it is great that we have an actual sort of verbatim record if someone wants to go to that. So I completely agree. We shouldn't, for those reasons, be inviting public comment.
Yeah.
Right, and I will say that when I read them, I felt that it captured the basics of the discussion adequately. And I'll say I even felt that the same way after I read the and checked the transcript against what was recorded, and I thought it did not, it was consistent with what was there, so sufficiently consistent.
Yeah, I agree. I checked the transcript as well and would agree with Rebecca that every edit she asked for was something she said. It's really more the principle of allowing for public editing of minutes that I object to here.
Or I'd say even some of the edits weren't exact either. So it speaks to, we're always doing that all the time. So we have to summarize and what have you. All right.
Okay.
May I
so-
make one comment at the end? May I make one comment?
Certainly.
Right, when we get to the end. So.
Okay.
And just to confirm it from a kind of from a fact basis, Ellen, I think the initial set of minutes that you provided as part of the public records request kind of reflect the things, the sort of feedback you got from the sort of board members who are sort of operating the board. So I think you got Daryl, Matt, and Matt's feedback for the sort of minutes that were produced as part of the public records request. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I don't have any other comment. Does anybody else? And then we can let Rebecca share her thoughts and insights.
I just
No.
have one more, and that is, I'm always amazed when I look at the minutes, and if I'm looking at the recordings at the same time, reviewing them for things for my own understanding, I am amazed at how much Ellen is able to capture and keep up with in those meetings. So kudos to you, Ellen. You really do a great job of it. Okay, Rebecca, what would you like to say?
Thanks. I agree with the board that it's, it's dangerous to invite public comment. But it's sort of funny. There are two places where I believe there are substantive errors. And the first one was where I was trying to say that the authors of there was a lot of thoughtful consideration put into the open space bylaw. And this was, but it was flipped in the minutes. They said the thoughtful consideration was having to do with the amendments, but that wasn't what I was saying. I was trying to acknowledge that the authors worked really hard on writing a very good bylaw. And that's what I was trying to say. So it was a misinterpretation of what I said, which is why I wanted to correct it in the minutes. And the second thing was that I said, I do not believe our regulations are deficient. And it says that I say they are, and I don't. I think this is a new problem that's introduced by the recent bylaw change. It's not that the bylaws are deficient, it's that we have new work that needs to be done to accommodate to this change. And that's the reason that I wanted to make those changes. I acknowledge that I'm very detail oriented, and some of the comments were very specific and probably irrelevant. And I also definitely agree that Ellen does an excellent job of the minutes, and it's a really hard job. And I really appreciate all of the work that she does. And so I just want to make sure that she understands that. I just wanted people to understand have the minutes accurately represent what I had said. And I think there were a couple things where they were flipped, and I want to straighten that out.
Thanks so much, Rebecca. Does the board feel in a position to vote to approve the minutes as initially submitted to Ellen?
So moved.
Seconded.
I can't
Any other
vote,
comments?
Yeah.
right?
All right,
Yeah.
all right, Matt, you want to start us off?
Sure, Matt Beavers, aye.
Matt Vitale, aye.
And Daryl, I.
And then Ellen, one request I have for the minutes for this meeting is, can the minutes for this meeting, for the discussion of the minutes of last meeting, please include Rebecca's 2 comments about the points of clarification that she was hoping to offer?
Yes.
Perfect. So Rebecca, it may not be on the March 16th meeting, but will be reflected in a set of minutes as your public comment on those 2 points as it relates to the approval of those minutes.
Thank you.
Does that do it for tonight?
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
With
So
abiding
moved.
enthusiasm.
Can we second and third that right now?
Second.
Okay, Matt,
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Matt Natali, aye.
and Daryl, I.
Have a good night,
Thank you
guys.
all.
I'm
Bye.
paying my,
Bye.
I'm paying
Right.
my full cover charge tonight. You delivered.
Yeah,
You're
really.
getting your money's worth.
Ciao, guys. Thank you.